Chapter 232. Wind and Thunder Mansion, Danger. When Qing Lian saw that Zhuowen was about to charge into the Sea of Thunder, she raised her hand and shouted involuntarily. Is Zhuowen courting death? He actually dares to charge into such a huge lightning sea? Su Mu's eyes hardened as he spoke in a somewhat strange manner. Although Zhuowen's performance was indeed very eye-catching, the sea of lightning before them was too powerful. Even a heavenly king realm cultivator might die instantly if they charged in, and Zhuowen's actual cultivation was only at the human king realm, rumble. A faintly discernible ink-black fog lingered around Zhuowen's body. After which, he plunged into the sea of lightning. In an instant, lightning shot out in all directions. The lightning that was as thick as a bucket spread out like ripples. The power of the lightning was so powerful that it seemed as though even space itself was about to be distorted. However, Zhuowen's figure, which was wrapped by the black fog, appeared as though nothing had happened. He merely paused in front of the lightning sea for a moment before charging into it without any hindrance. In the blink of an eye, his figure had completely disappeared into the lightning sea. He went in? Qing Lian's beautiful eyes slightly bulged. She couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. She didn't expect Zhuowen to be able to resist the power of lightning in the sea of lightning and directly rush in. After all, even she was very afraid of the power of the sea of lightning. Could it be that this sea of lightning is useless? In fact, it's not that powerful at all? Su Mu was stunned for a moment when he saw the figure disappear into the lightning sea. Soon after, an eager expression appeared on his face. He also knew that the real cave dwelling was on the opposite side of the lightning sea. The treasures there definitely surpassed an earthly soul treasure like the 9-wheel burning sky cauldron. When he thought of this, a feverish glint appeared in Su Mu's eyes. He stomped his foot and shot towards Lei Hai like an arrow released from a bow. Rumble! Countless bolts of lightning shot out from the sea of lightning, directly striking Su Mu's body. Su Mu's pupils suddenly shrank, and he was suddenly sent flying in a barbaric manner. He landed on the ground, and after a dozen or so meters of scratches, he slammed heavily into the solid wall behind him. Wow! Su Mu immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes dimmed and his aura withered. Looking at Su Mu, who was instantly sent flying by the sea of lightning, everyone's eyes widened as a dull expression appeared on their faces. They didn't expect that a complete earthly king realm cultivator wasn't even qualified to enter the lightning sea of lightning. However, Zhuowen had easily entered the sea of lightning. Everyone knew what this signified. After Qiu's palace, the heavenly king realm ancient cave collapse, the heavenly king realm world, the heavenly palace ancient heavens, and heavenly ancient realm. At the same time, the entrance whirlpool above the heaven fiend dark eye gradually began to close. It was as though the ancient cave mansion had once again closed at this moment. What's happening? Heavens to Qiu to realm to heavens to heavens to heavens God realm heavens great heavens heavens realm to heavens. At this moment, there were already quite a number of warriors gathered in the open space of the heaven fiend dark eye. Most of these warriors were too weak and were unable to enter the stone door. Hence, they waited in the open space dispiritedly. Although they did not have the qualifications to fight for the treasure, they were able to see what the true treasure of the ancient cave was like. This trip was not a loss for them. In the middle of the open space, the 9th Commandery Princess and her people were also there. Since Su Chang was severely injured in the ancient cavern, the 9th Commandery Princess didn't want to go deeper. She knew very well that the deeper they went into the ancient cavern, the more dangerous it would be. With her strength, even if she went deeper into the ancient cavern, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to compete with the cultivators from other forces. Therefore, she decisively withdrew. Moreover, she was confident that with Lu Yuanhua's peak Earth Monarch stage cultivation and Lingzhu's peak Heavenly King stage cultivation, the biggest benefit of this ancient cavern would definitely be their house of Marquis Qin. If she went in, she would only be a burden to Lu Yuanhua and Lingzhu. What happened in the cave? Why was the entrance gradually disappearing? Are third brother and elder Ling still inside? Looking at the gradually disappearing whirlpool, the ninth commandery princess frowned and said. At the side, Su Cheng's expression was rather ugly. After all, his elder brother, Su Mu, was still in the cave. If the entrance disappeared just like that, wouldn't that mean that those who were still in the cave wouldn't be able to come out? In the endless thunder sea, a figure surrounded by ink-black fog was moving forward with difficulty in the sea of thunder and lightning. Dense thunder and lightning as thick as buckets covered this figure from time to time, but they were easily blocked by the ink-black fog around the figure. What a strong power of thunder and lightning! I didn't expect the power of the thunder sea to be so strong. If it weren't for the fact that my origin of soul had recovered a lot, I would have been blasted into pieces after entering this thunder sea. This figure was naturally Zhuowen, who had broken into the thunder sea. At this time, on his shoulder, Xiao He was constantly waving her little claws to resist the surging thunder and lightning outside, but she was cursing. Xiao He, it was your idea to enter the thunder sea. If anything happens to you, I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. In the black fog, Zhuowen looked at the endless thunder and lightning outside and said fiercely to Xiao He on his shoulder, trembling with fear. Don't worry. With me here, do you think anything will happen to you? Xiao He said proudly on his shoulder. Zhuowen rolled his eyes at Xiao He, who was a little arrogant on his shoulder. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to her and focused on slowly moving forward in the thunder sea. After all, Xiao He was a strong existence from ancient times. Although her soul was severely damaged, after the recovery of the holy ice flame talisman's origin, her soul had also recovered a lot. It was more than enough to resist the power of thunder and lightning that kept coming out of the thunder sea. After walking in this manner for 2 hours in fear, Zhuowen finally walked out of the area of the lightning sea without any mishap. The moment he rushed out of the thunder sea, Zhuowen could clearly feel a powerful spatial fluctuation being emitted. Bright silver light filled his eyes. A long while later, after gradually adapting to it, Zhuowen also slowly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, the scene before him was reflected in Zhuowen's eyes. After which, a momentary absent-mindedness appeared in his eyes. What appeared in front of Zhuowen was an extremely vast land. On the land there were quite a number of palaces. However, most of the palaces were now in ruins. Nevertheless, from the scale of the ruins, it was not difficult to see the majesty and vastness of this place when it was still intact. The entire land was in a gray state. A dilapidated aura rippled between heaven and earth. The vicissitudes and ancientness in it made one understand that this piece of land had been left with only vitality for a long time. Zhuowen looked at the scene in front of him in astonishment. Obviously, he had not expected that the cave mansion, which seemed to have a universe, would be in such a dilapidated state. It did not look like it had been left behind after a successful inheritance. Instead, it looked more like it had been destroyed by a catastrophe. Is this the mansion of Sir God Feng Lei? How could it be so dilapidated? Zhuowen frowned slightly as he looked at the dilapidated ruins in front of him and muttered softly. Looks like God Monarch Wind Thunder has also fallen. Even such a figure couldn't escape from the catastrophe 10,000 years ago. Sir God Feng Lei was considered a genius. He only used 1,000 years to reach the peak of the sage realm. His strength was almost above all the sages. If he did not die, he might have truly stepped into the divine realm. Xiao He seemed to have thought of something and suddenly murmured in a sad voice. Xiao He, what happened 10,000 years ago? Even Sir God Feng Lei, an expert who almost reached the divine realm, fell? Zhuowen's brows furrowed tighter and tighter. He could feel that something extremely big must have happened 10,000 years ago. However, every time he asked about it, Xiao He would always be secretive. This made Zhuowen even more puzzled. Boy, you are too weak now. It is not good for you to know such secrets in advance. When your strength is comparable to a sage's, even if I don't tell you, someone else will tell you. At that time, you will probably regret knowing the truth of what happened 10,000 years ago." Xiao He sighed and said helplessly. Zhuowen curled his lips slightly. He knew that it was impossible to get any useful information from Xiao He. However, he could not help but be shocked. He did not expect that he could only know such secrets after his strength reached the sage realm. His current strength was worlds apart from that of a sage's. In the sky above the ruins, there was a thunderbolt that could cover the sky and cover the sun. It constantly flashed past like a meteor shower that repeatedly streaked across the void in the night sky. However, the thunderstorm in the sky was much more terrifying than a meteor shower. If one accidentally touched it, one might be blasted into pieces. Rumble. When Zhuowen stepped into the open space of the ruins, there was a violent tremor. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. Then, Zhuowen realized that at the end of the ruins in front of him, there was an illusory figure that was thousands of feet tall. The illusory figure had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He looked to be about 30 years old. He wore a purple gold crown and a starry feather robe. When he moved, countless bolts of lightning exploded in the space. It was as if all the lightning in the space was controlled by this figure. F***CK. Could this fellow be Sir God Feng Lei? Zhuowen's throat trembled as he looked at the stalwart figure in the distance, and said with a dry mouth. Xiao He, who was on his shoulder, had a rare serious look on her face. She said, "Emperor Feng Lei died 10,000 years ago. This illusory figure is probably a doppelganger left behind by the former. However, after 10,000 years, this doppelganger is about to collapse. As Emperor Feng Lei has died, this doppelganger naturally does not have any consciousness. Intruder, die." As soon as the mountain-like illusory figure appeared, its starry eyes were filled with violent killing intent. It stared down coldly and its cold voice was like thunder that exploded in the sky. As soon as Emperor Feng Lei's doppelganger said that, he waved his right hand gently. A sea of thunderbolts poured out in front of him. Chapter 233. The Battle of the Ages. Looking into the distance, Zhuowen was still able to see that behind the enormous illusory figure, there was actually a rather majestic and enormous palace. In the ruins of so many palaces, there was still an intact palace. Even a fool could guess that there was definitely a treasure left by Emperor Feng Lei in the palace. Even the legendary holy charm of wind thunder was in the palace. Brat. Don't act rashly and alert the enemy. Go over slowly. This dragon lord will help you conceal yourself. If we can sneak past those people, we will be able to enter the palace completely. All the treasures inside will be ours, and we might even find the wind thunder sacred symbol. Xiao He waved her little paw and said in a trembling voice. Zhuowen's hands could not help but tremble when he heard that. However, he was more nervous in his heart. After all, regardless of whether it was Elder Qiu, the barefoot young lady, or Sir God Feng Lei's clone, both of them were not to be trifled with. If he was discovered by any one of them, with Zhuowen's current strength, it would be difficult for him to escape death. Zhuowen slowly walked forward. Soon after, he approached the flat ground at the end of the ruins. Due to the concealment of Xiao He's source energy, no one discovered Zhuowen's arrival. I didn't expect Emperor Feng Lei to leave a doppelganger in the cave mansion. Although it is only a doppelganger, it is still very powerful. Miss, if you have the chance later, you must take the opportunity to enter that hall. I will hold back this clone. Elder Qiu's old face was filled with a grave expression as he spoke softly to the young girl beside him. The barefoot young lady did not say anything. She only nodded her head gently. However, there was a trace of fiery passion in her eyes as she stared at the hall. Clearly, the young lady's heart was not as calm as she appeared on the surface. Intruder, die. A loud roar sounded like a thunderclap. The 100,000 feet large giant clenched his large fist and ruthlessly smashed it toward old Chiu and the young lady below. Endless thunderbolts surged out from the surface of his fist and sealed the two of them like a prison. Humph! It's just a clone. After 10,000 years of baptism, how much strength can your clone retain? Chiu Lao coldly snorted. His foot suddenly stomped on the ground and blocked in front of the young lady. His hands quickly formed a complicated seal in front of him. An extremely surging yuan power fluctuation continuously surged out from Chiu Lao's body. Under this fluctuation, the surrounding space began to distort. Void erosion seal. Elder Chiu let out a roar and a black seal appeared in his hands. With a flick of his finger, the black seal was like words engraved on a rock as it fiercely imprinted itself on the space in front of him. An invisible devouring power spread out from the seal. The space in front of Chiu Lao twisted and spun. It was as if the space was being devoured by the seal. Rumble! Amidst the endless thunderbolts, the huge fist of the shadow finally smashed onto the black seal. Boom! 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 With one punch, the surrounding space immediately collapsed. The space shattered inch by inch like glass. However, the black seal in front of Chiu Lao was magical. Under the earth-shattering attack, it did not show any signs of collapsing. Instead, the seal continuously emitted a devouring power and completely devoured the thunderbolts on the huge fist. Die! 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 When the shadow clone saw that the punch did not kill the two ant-like figures below, his blurry facial features immediately revealed a furious expression. He raised his pillar-like left hand towards the sky and pulled the huge thunderbolt down from the sky. With the thunderbolt in his hand, the shadow roared towards the sky. With both hands holding the thunderbolt, he viciously smashed it towards Chiu Lao. When Chiu Lao saw this, his expression changed drastically. He naturally knew how powerful the huge thunderbolt was. He did not expect the Wind Thunder God's clone to be able to pull the thunderbolt down and use it as a weapon. Immediately, his hands formed a series of seals. The yuan power in his body surged out and violently poured into the void erosion seal in front of him. Miss, this place is dangerous. You should leave quickly. This clone's strength is unexpectedly strong. After doing this, Elder Chiu didn't forget to yell at the girl behind him. The barefoot girl's beautiful eyes flashed. Her bare feet tapped on the red lotus under her feet and she turned into a rainbow shadow. She only stopped after taking a few hundred steps back. She frowned as she looked at the crazy shadow clone not far away. Boom! The thunderbolt that was tens of thousands of feet long was like a bolt of lightning that descended from the heavens. In the end, it fiercely smashed onto the space-eroding seal. The space within a radius of tens of thousands of feet actually collapsed one after another. Spatial fragments shattered like glass and fell down. Within this tens of thousands of feet of space, an endless black hole was created. Waves of fierce astral winds constantly swept out from the black hole. Damn! This was too powerful. Were all Imperial Power Realm cultivators so freakishly powerful? Can space collapse and the sun and moon lose their light just by lifting their hands? Zhuowen, who was hiding at the side, suddenly widened his eyes. He looked at the unparalleled battle not far in front of him in disbelief. Merely a single strike had caused the space in an area of tens of thousands of feet to collapse, and countless black holes surged out explosively from within the space. Such formidable combat strength simply caused Zhuo Wen's breathing to become hurried while his heart surged. I wonder when he'll be able to attain such a level. Boy, if you follow me, it will be a piece of cake for you to reach this level. Moreover, with your talent, it shouldn't be difficult for you to reach the Emperor realm. Xiao He chuckled and boasted arrogantly. Rolling his eyes, Zhuowen ignored Xiao He, who was bragging on his shoulder. Instead, he focused on watching the unparalleled battle in the open space. This was the first time Zhuowen had seen a battle between Emperor Realm experts. Now that he could watch more, it would be of great help to his comprehension of martial arts. Bang! The thunderbolt was like a hot knife through butter. The black seal only lasted for 15 minutes before it could not withstand the monstrous power of the huge thunderbolt. It began to slowly collapse. Chiu Lao groaned and retreated a dozen steps. However, in the process of retreating, his hands formed a seal. A golden stone platform immediately flew out from his palms and blocked in front of him. Stone-splitting golden platform seal. The golden stone platform valiantly appeared and finally blocked the remaining thunderbolt. However, Chiu Lao was also injured by the previous attack. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. I didn't expect a mere doppelganger to have such power. Sir Godwin Thunder is really strong. Zhuowen couldn't help but click his tongue when he saw Elder Chiu, who was injured not far away. The barefoot young lady knitted her eyebrows tightly when she saw that Chiu Lao was at a disadvantage. The back of her teeth gently bit her lower lip. Her jade-like feet gently stepped on the red lotus. The red lotus under her feet immediately began to rotate rapidly, after which the young lady transformed into a demonic red glow. With a lightning-like speed, she suddenly rushed toward the entrance of the hall not far away. Trespassers of the royal palace, die. The virtual shadow's doppelganger also noticed the barefooted girl's actions. He suddenly shouted loudly, and the thunderbolt in his right hand suddenly swept out. An earth-shattering sea of thunderbolts surged out like a stormy sea. It turned into waves of thunderbolts and swept towards the red light. Miss, be careful! Seeing the endless sea of thunderbolts sweeping toward the girl, Chiu Lao was instantly shocked. He did not expect the girl to choose this time to rush into the palace. The red light streaked across the void. When the red light was only 10 steps away from the entrance of the palace, the endless sea of thunderbolts surged toward it. Looking at the endless sea of thunderbolts that was about to reach her, the girl clenched her teeth. She patted the Qiankuan bag on her waist and took out a round mirror that shone with starlight. The heavens have no eyes, the stars turn into tears. The girl shouted and took out the round mirror. The round mirror expanded with the wind and instantly became dozens of feet large. The round mirror contained countless twinkling stars. These stars revolved around the round mirror and formed a huge nebula on the surface of the round mirror. Finally, it stopped in front of the girl. Rumble! The endless sea of thunderbolts suddenly blasted on the nebula and exploded into countless sparks. The nebula shook violently under the impact of the sea of thunderbolt. The barefoot girl could not help but spit out a mouthful of fresh blood. However, the sea of thunderbolts was still barely blocked by the nebula. Not far away, Zhuowen also saw the nebula in front of the girl and could not help but secretly click his tongue. It's actually an earthly soul treasure. No wonder this girl can casually take out such a precious item like the earth fire. It turns out that she is very wealthy. Kid, don't make a fuss. This is a good opportunity. The doppelganger's attention has already been attracted by the girl. Our chance is here. Hurry up and rush in for this dragon lord. Xiao Hei's eyes shone with a terrifying light as he suddenly shouted. Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded and stomped on the ground. His entire body was like a black cheetah as he quickly went around the girl and directly shot toward the entrance of the palace. In an instant, the scene became strange. Regardless of whether it was Elder Chiu or the barefoot girl, they both looked at the figure behind them in disbelief. They did not expect that there would be a third person here. However, when they saw the face of this figure, the surprise on their faces immediately turned into horror. This was because this figure was none other than Zhuowen, who had just traded the key with them. Those who enter the royal palace will all die. When the doppelganger saw that Zhuowen was about to enter the palace, its eyes immediately turned vertical. Waves of brutal aura instantly filled its entire body. With a wave of its hands, the sea of thunderbolts in front of the girl suddenly became countless times more vigorous. In a breath's time, the nebula in front of the girl actually collapsed inch by inch. Spurt. A mouthful of blood flowed out from her cherry lip. The girl was like an angel with broken wings as she suddenly flew backward. In front of the girl, a monstrous sea of thunderbolts surged violently. Chapter 234. Entering the palace, the young lady's waist was as slender as bamboo. Zhuowen took the opportunity to pull her into his embrace with his right hand. With a soft fragrance in his embrace, Zhuowen's mind should have been enchanting. However, he did not have the slightest intention of doing so. The reason was that after being delayed by the young lady, the monstrous lightning sea in the distance was already close at hand. In the blink of an eye, it would devour Zhuowen. How unlucky! Gritting his teeth, Zhuowen patted his Qianquan bag and took out the 9-wheel burning sky cauldron. With a wave of his right hand, he summoned it. Buzz buzz. A clear buzzing sound was transmitted from within the cauldron. The 9-wheel burning sky cauldron had a total of 9 fire openings, which represented the positions of the 9 types of earth flames. At this moment, 2 types of surging flames suddenly shot out from 2 of the fire openings. One of the deep blue flames contained endless flashes of lightning in the center of the blazing flames. Lightning and fire intertwined to create an extremely aggressive, explosive energy. It was the 9 heavens thunder flame. The other type of green lotus flame was in full bloom. Thousands of green sparks floated down within 5 feet of the lotus. It was the 3,000 green lotus flame that he had exchanged with Elder Qiu and the young lady. The 2 types of peerlessly powerful earth flames surged out, forming a sea of fire in the sky that was intertwined with lightning and green lotuses. It suddenly intercepted the incoming lightning sea. Rumble! The sea of lightning and the sea of fire collided. The surrounding air seemed to have evaporated. Everything within sight became completely distorted. Numerous muffled explosions exploded, causing deafening sounds to ring out. In an instant, the sea of fire was suppressed by the lightning sea to the point that it continuously trembled. It was like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any moment. A mouthful of blood was suddenly spat out. Zhuowen's face revealed a shocked expression. He did not expect that the 9-wheel burning sky array formed by 2 types of earth flames would be so forceful in front of the lightning sea. The barefoot young lady in his embrace also regained her senses. She looked at the arm around her waist. Spots of cherry red appeared on her creamy skin and her snow-white face was incomparably red. The barefoot young lady had never been in such close contact with someone of the opposite sex since she was young, let alone being hugged by a strange man. This caused the young lady to feel a trace of strangeness and embarrassment in her heart. "You're too presumptuous. Let me go or you'll regret it." Due to the impact of the lightning sea from the doppelganger, the young girl's body had suffered serious injuries. At this moment, her entire body was limp and she couldn't exert any strength. Therefore, although she wanted to break free from Zhuowen's embrace, she couldn't. Zhuowen's heart was also flustered as he gazed at the young lady squirming about in his arms. What kind of situation was it now? If they could not withstand the sea of lightning in front of them, both of them would die. How could they still care about such matters? "Be quiet. If you continue to struggle, both of us will die. You'd better cooperate." At this moment, Zhuowen's expression was quite ugly. Now that they were at the point of life and death, he didn't care how great the girl's background was. He directly tightened his right hand and held the girl tightly in his arms. At this moment, the girl's entire back was pressed against Zhuowen's chest. Her perky buttocks were pressed against Zhuowen's thighs, preventing the former from moving. "You!" The young girl's exquisite face finally turned completely red, just like a ripe red apple. She didn't expect the young man in front of her to be so rough. "You'll regret it." After coldly throwing down these words, the young girl didn't dare to move anymore. She was afraid that Zhuowen would do something out of line in order to stabilize her. "Let's talk about it after we escape this calamity. If we die, won't we have no chance to regret it?" Zhuowen also coldly replied. At the same time, He tried his best to control the sea of fire in the sky, resisting the attack of the endless sea of lightning with great difficulty. Miss. In the distance, Chiu Lao looked at Zhuowen and the young girl, who were instantly covered by the sea of lightning. His expression changed drastically. With a loud cry, his feet stomped on the ground, and like an arrow leaving a bow, he suddenly shot towards the sea of lightning. Humph! The doppelganger naturally wouldn't let Chiu Lao do as he wished. With a cold snort, his mountain-like left hand, which was wrapped in endless lightning, suddenly blasted towards Chiu Lao. Bang! A ring-shaped air wave scattered in the air, causing Chiu Lao's expression to change. He had no choice but to turn around and block the doppelganger's attack. When the two of them exchanged blows, Chiu Lao let out a muffled groan without exception. His entire body flew backwards. Rip! The sound of cloth tearing suddenly sounded. Zhuowen, who was surrounded by the 9 heavens thunder flame and the 3,000 jade lotus flame, had a drastic change in expression. The sea of fire above him was actually torn apart by the sea of lightning in an instant, revealing a large opening, after which endless lightning surged in. Not good. The 9-wheel burning sky array has been torn apart. Xiao He, why aren't you helping? Looking at the surging sea of lightning, Zhuowen's pupils suddenly shrank, and he immediately shouted. Once Zhuowen's words left his mouth, endless ink-black fog suddenly surged out from his body. The sea of lightning crashed into the ink-black fog with a loud explosion. However, it was like mud falling into the sea, and was actually completely corroded by the power of the fog. Brat, leave quickly. I won't be able to hold on for long. Xiao Hei's anxious voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Hearing this, Zhuowen's gaze hardened. He hugged the young lady in his arms and stepped on the void. Like an arrow leaving the bow, he rushed towards the opening above the sea of lightning. Outside the sea of lightning, Chiu Lao's eyes were filled with anger. He was fighting the doppelganger with all his might. He knew that if anything happened to the barefoot young lady, he would not be able to escape the huge responsibility. At that time, when the higher-ups blamed him, it was very likely that he would not be able to escape death. After all, the young lady's identity was too special. If Miss dies, I will completely destroy your cave mansion. Damn you, immortal Fenglei! Chiu Lao stepped on the void, continuously using dazzling moves to attack the doppelganger, and he cursed rudely. Rumble! Just as Chiu Lao's voice fell, a loud sound suddenly sounded from not far away. He immediately turned his head to look, and a trace of disbelief suddenly appeared in his eyes. This was because he saw that Zhuowen was carrying the young lady, and he suddenly tore through the sea of lightning's barrier. He was rushing towards the entrance of the palace at lightning speed. This brat can actually tear through the sea of lightning of the doppelganger. He is clearly only at the human king realm. How did he do it? Chiu Lao was stunned for a moment, and he muttered to himself. The imperial palace is an important place. Do not enter without permission. Seeing that Zhuowen was approaching the imperial palace again, the doppelganger became violent again. He waved his huge right hand, and countless bolts of lightning swept out, shooting towards Zhuowen. Damn! This guy is really like a ghost. Isn't it just entering the imperial palace? Why is he so agitated? Looks like I have to rely on that thing. Looking at the bolts of lightning behind him, Zhuowen could not help but curse in a low voice. After cursing a few times, Zhuowen suddenly patted his storage bag, and took out a jade tablet. The word teleport was engraved in the middle of the jade tablet. This jade tablet was the teleport tablet that Lin Xuanzhong had given him before he left. Although this tablet was only a middle-rank spiritual treasure, it had a unique teleportation ability. Its value had far exceeded that of a middle-rank spiritual treasure, and it was completely comparable to a high-rank spiritual treasure. After all, the effect of this tablet was to teleport to any place within 1,000 feet in a day. Thinking of this, Zhuowen suddenly formed a seal with both hands. Then, Yuan power suddenly poured into the teleport tablet in his hand. The teleport tablet emitted a blazing light, and Zhuowen was wrapped in a ball of light. Then, Zhuowen directly disappeared from the spot. When Zhuowen reappeared, he was already standing at the entrance of the palace. At this moment, not only was Qiu Lao stunned, but even the illusory avatar was stunned. They did not expect the young man to be able to teleport. Subsequently, Qiu Lao and the illusory avatar stared blankly at the young man at the entrance. He took a step forward and disappeared from the entrance. Qiu Lao was stunned for a while before he realized that the barefoot girl was still in Zhuowen's hands. He could not help but shout and wanted to follow behind Zhuowen into the palace. However, the virtual shadow avatar naturally would not let Qiu Lao pass so easily. Boom! The virtual shadow avatar only needed one punch to push Qiu Lao back. Under the powerful attack of the virtual shadow avatar, Qiu Lao could only temporarily avoid the attack. He looked at the palace behind him with a slightly unwilling gaze. After entering the palace, there was a rather deep passageway. After entering, Zhuowen let out a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to speak, a jade-like hand suddenly appeared in front of him. Then, the jade-like hand viciously slammed onto Zhuowen's chest. Caught off guard, Zhuowen was instantly hit by the jade-like hand. With a whoosh sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He leaned against the wall and looked coldly at the girl in front of him. Finally willing to let go? The girl waved her jade-like hand. Her jade-like foot stepped on the red lotus and slowly floated into the air. She looked coldly at the young man in front of her. In the depths of her beautiful eyes, there was even a trace of killing intent. When she thought about how the young man in front of her had actually rudely hugged her delicate body, the girl's heart was already filled with shame and anger. If it was not for the fact that the situation was critical, she would not have just sent out a simple palm. She would have directly taken the young man's life. Cough, cough. The girl's internal injuries were clearly very serious. After breaking free from Zhuowen, she actually coughed out another mouthful of blood. Her delicate body trembled slightly and collapsed against the wall of the passageway. She looked at the young man in front of her rather cautiously. Shrugging his shoulders, Zhuowen looked somewhat helplessly at the girl in front of him. Then, he patted his Qianquan bag and took out an emerald-colored elixir. He threw it to the girl and said, "You're still trying to be brave after suffering such serious injuries? This elixir is called the Soul Nurturing Elixir. It is refined from the Grade 4 Soul Nurturing Grass. It should be able to alleviate your injuries to a certain extent." After receiving the Soul Nurturing Elixir, the girl frowned slightly. Her eyes flickered, but she did not eat the elixir. Instead, she stared straight at Zhuowen in front of her. "You don't need to look at me like that. Your death does not benefit me at all. To be able to have an Emperor Realm expert as a bodyguard, your identity is clearly not ordinary. If you die here, even if I obtain the treasures here, I'm afraid that I won't be able to leave the cave. After all, the Emperor Realm Elder outside will not let me go." Zhuowen spread out his hands and said in a somewhat hoodlum manner. Hearing these words, the girl's eyes finally moved. She coldly said, "Then I'll believe you this once." Chapter 235. Xing Yuan. After swallowing the energy enhancement pill, the young girl felt a warm current flow through her stomach. This warm current circulated through her 8 extraordinary meridians, and under the effect of this warm current, the weak feeling in her body slowly dissipated. A glint exploded from her beautiful eyes. The young lady did not expect that the Yuan nourishing pill that Zhuowen had given her would actually have such a miraculous effect. Under the effects of the Yuan nourishing pill, although the injuries in her body were still quite serious, they were much better than the previous weak and powerless state. "I really didn't expect you to have such a pill on you. It seems you've gained a lot in this cave." Feeling the gradually expanding warmth in her body, the girl gradually let down her guard and took the initiative to speak. Zhuowen smiled and turned his head to look at the deep passageway in front of him. He said faintly, "God Emperor Feng Lei's avatar is waiting outside." I'm afraid we can't get out. Our only choice is to enter the hall. However, this palace is Emperor Fenglei's mansion. I'm afraid it's full of danger. We should join forces to get into the depth. What do you think, miss? Zhuowen turned to look at the girl. Nodding slightly, the young girl said indifferently, "Now that we are ants on the same line, we should join hands. Also, my name is Mu Chinxue. You can call me by my name." After putting down their guard, the two of them quickly formed an alliance. After all, this palace was extremely vast and no one knew what kind of dangers were hidden inside. At this moment, having one more person was equivalent to having one more power. Go. The two of them looked at each other before turning into two illusory figures that disappeared into the tunnel and rushed towards the end. At the end of the passageway, there was a huge bronze door. However, this bronze door was unlatched. Looking at the half-closed bronze door, Zhuowen and Mu Chinxue both narrowed their eyes. An unexpected premonition surfaced in their hearts. The bronze door has already been opened. Could it be that someone has already entered this palace? However, other than the two of us, there is only Elder Qiu who is still trapped outside. Could it be that there is a fourth person? Zhuowen's expression changed as he whispered with an unsightly expression. Mu Chinxue, who was beside him, also frowned. Even she did not expect such an unforeseen event to occur. If this palace had really been taken by someone else, wouldn't that mean that everything inside had already been plundered? It shouldn't be possible. After all, the passageway to the Wind Thunder Divine Residence was opened by Elder Qiu himself. It's impossible to avoid Elder Qiu's detection and enter the Wind Thunder Divine Residence in advance. Therefore, this large bronze door should have been opened by someone a long time ago. Look at the crack of the door, there is a thick layer of dust. Clearly, this door has not been closed for a long time. Zhuowen was startled. He took a closer look and found that there was indeed a thick layer of dust in the crack of the door. He smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that we have come here for nothing. I didn't expect that someone had already reached this hall before us. Since we're already here, we have to go in and take a look." Mu Chinxue bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth as she reluctantly said those words. Then, she flew through the door. In front of the large bronze door, Zhuowen hesitated for a moment as he looked at Mu Chinxue, who had disappeared through the crack of the door. He was also unwilling to leave just like that. His body flashed and he entered through the crack of the door. After he entered the large bronze door, a quiet stone hall appeared in his sight. The stone hall did not have many luxurious decorations. Instead, it appeared exceptionally simple. It was empty and there were not many decorations. Zhuowen's eyes looked around and focused on the center of the stone hall. There was a huge stone coffin there. There was no lid on the stone coffin. At a glance, it was empty. The interior of the large stone hall was actually so simple and crude. Zhuowen guessed that the things inside should have been taken by the person who had reached this place first. It seems that we have come here for nothing. I originally thought that I would find the Wind Thunder sacred symbol after entering this place. I didn't expect that someone would beat me to it. In the end, it was all for nothing. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth involuntarily twitched as he muttered to himself in a low voice as he looked at the empty and desolate stone hall around him. Mu Chinxue, who was standing at the front, did not reveal the slightest bit of disappointment on her face. Instead, a trace of joy flashed across her watery eyes. Mu Chinxue's jade-like feet lightly stepped on a red lotus and slowly floated to the center of the large hall, above the stone coffin that did not have a lid. She gently raised her jade-like hand and a surge of yuan power immediately surged out. With a loud bang, the large stone coffin began to crumble inch by inch under the yuan power. Zhuowen's brows tightly knitted together as he looked at the surging yuan power on Mu Chinxue's body. At the beginning, he had not paid attention to Mu Chinxue's cultivation level. Now that she had displayed the yuan power within her body, Zhuowen discovered that her aura was actually much stronger than that of Lingzhu. It was obvious that her cultivation level had already reached the ultimate emperor realm. Perhaps because Qiu Lao's strength was too shocking, Zhuowen had previously overlooked Mu Qinshue's own strength. Now that he felt the aura of an ultimate emperor realm expert within her body, Zhuowen's expression could not help but change slightly. After all, Mu Qinshu was about the same age as Zhuowen. She was only about 16 years old, but her cultivation level had already reached the ultimate emperor realm. It seemed that not only did this woman have a terrifying background, but her own talent was also extremely shocking. Countless fragments peeled off layer by layer from the stone coffin. Then, a golden light burst out from the fragments of the stone coffin. Following that, a palm-sized golden ball quietly floated in the air. Mu Qinshue's eyes lit up as she stared at the golden ball floating in the air. She muttered in a low voice, "It seems that Qiu Lao's guess was right. The divine monarch Wind Thunder's saint origin was actually hidden within the stone coffin. Although I did not obtain the Wind Thunder sacred symbol this time, being able to obtain the divine monarch Wind Thunder's saint origin is already considered a great harvest." Zhuowen's face revealed a trace of doubt when he heard Mu Qinshue's words. This was the first time he had heard of this so-called saint origin. However, just as he was feeling confused, Xiao Hei's voice rang out in his mind, "It's actually saint origin. I never thought that the divine monarch Wind Thunder would actually leave saint origin in his own coffin. He's quite cunning." "Xiao Hei, what is saint origin?" Zhuowen hurriedly asked when he heard Xiao Hei speak. Saint origin is actually the essence of a saint. At the same time, it is also the source of a saint's power. To put it bluntly, it is equivalent to the dantian of a cultivator. It can continuously provide endless power to a saint. This kind of thing is a great supplement for some cultivators in the saint realm, but it is like poison for cultivators below the saint realm. After all, a saint is already different from an ordinary cultivator. Saint origin contains the power of a saint. It is the truth of the laws of heaven and earth. If a cultivator below the saint realm absorbs the saint origin, he will not be able to withstand the impact of the laws of heaven and earth. His body will explode and he will die. Looking at this little girl's happy face, it seems that the force behind her should have someone who has reached the saint realm. This saint origin should be for that person to use. When Blackie said this, there was a hint of fear in his voice. When Zhuowen heard this, a trace of disappointment appeared on his face. It seemed that this saint origin was useless to him. He could only look at it but not touch it. Once he used it, his body would explode and he would die. "Young Master Zhuo, this is saint origin. Only a saint can absorb it. This kind of thing is useless to you, but it is very useful to my elders. You won't fight with me for this thing, right?" Holding the saint origin in her hand, Mu Qinshu stepped back slightly and looked at the young man in front of her with some vigilance. Although the young man in front of her was only in the human king realm, his performance just now made Mu Qinshu have to take him seriously. Moreover, she had not recovered from her injuries yet. If Zhuowen really had bad intentions, it was not certain who would emerge victorious. Therefore, Mu Qinshu was smart enough to introduce the effects of saint origin, indicating that this thing was useless to Zhuowen. After listening to Xiao Hei's introduction, Zhuowen had already lost interest in saint origin. He spread his hands and said, "Don't worry. I also know about saint origin. This thing is a great supplement to a saint, but it is highly toxic to cultivators below the saint realm. I won't go so far as to seek death by fighting for this thing." Mu Qinshue's beautiful eyes flashed, revealing a trace of surprise. She did not expect Zhuowen to know about the use of saint origin. After all, saints were extremely rare in the heavenly armor continent. Most of the people who knew about saint origin were great forces or peak powerhouses. However, this young man in front of her had a low background and his strength was even more insignificant. Unexpectedly, he knew about saint origin. This made Mu Chinshue feel a trace of surprise and curiosity in her heart. Although the young man in front of her looked ordinary, he could show amazing strength from time to time. Now, he even knew about Saint Origin that ordinary people did not know about. All these things added a lot of mystery to Zhuowen in Mu Qinshue's heart. Since young Master Zhue does not want to fight for this thing, Chen Shui will thank you in advance. Seeing that Zhuowen really did not want to fight for it, Mu Qinshu felt a little relieved. She cupped her hands politely to Zhuowen. With a gentle wave of his hand, Zhuowen walked towards the stone coffin fragments. His eyes focused on the fragments below. He had narrowly escaped death this time around and had entered the hall with great difficulty. If he were to return empty-handed, Zhuowen would really be unwilling. Therefore, he had also begun to think about these stone coffin fragments. Perhaps he might be able to discover something. When Mu Qinshu saw Zhuowen begin to look at the stone coffin fragments, she knew that Zhuowen really did not want to fight for Saint Origin. Her heart was completely relaxed. She put the Saint Origin into her universe bag and began to look around the hall. Obviously, she had the same idea as Zhuowen, to see if she could find anything good. Boy, turn over the gravel on your left. There seems to be some writing on it. While Zhuowen was carefully looking at the stone coffin fragments, Xiao Hei's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. Slightly startled, Zhuowen did not hesitate and directly turned over the gravel on his left. He saw that there was actually some small writing engraved on the bottom of the gravel. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to find it. Only an abnormal person like Xiao Hei with a powerful divine sense would be able to find this inconspicuous piece of gravel among so many other gravel. Zhuowen cautiously glanced around the hall. After discovering that Mu Qinshu was looking at a wall, he let out a light breath and stared at the writing on the gravel. The wind, thunder saint symbol is not here. It is secretly hidden in the cave mansion's map. Chapter 236. Ecstasy incense. Squinting his eyes, Zhuowen clenched his right hand, and the gravel in his hand was instantly crushed. After confirming that Mu Qinshu didn't know about his abnormality, Zhuowen whispered, "It seems that the wind, thunder saint symbol doesn't exist here. The wind, thunder saint symbol must have hidden it somewhere else. Since the secret is in the cave mansion map, there should be clues in the map. Looks like we didn't come here empty-handed this time." Xiao Hei's voice gradually rang out in his mind. "Yes. It's not convenient to take out the map here. I'll study the map after I get out of the cave. I hope the map won't disappoint me." Clenching his fist, Zhuowen was filled with anticipation. He really wanted to see what the wind, thunder sacred symbol looked like. Just as Zhuowen was immersed in his thoughts, the hall suddenly shook violently. Zhuowen's complexion changed drastically. He turned his head to look at Mu Qinshu, who was not far away, and saw that the latter also had a blank look on her face. However, there was a palm-sized stone dent in the wall in front of her. Mechanism? Zhuowen's expression changed slightly as he felt the hall tremble. Mu Qinshu also frowned. She did not expect that she would trigger the mechanism just by casually touching the wall. Not good. The bronze gate is about to close. Zhuowen's eyes were sharp, and he could see that the bronze gate in the distance was slowly closing. Whoosh! Zhuowen's and Mu Qinshu's faces instantly changed. The two of them immediately used their movement techniques and rushed towards the bronze door. Unfortunately, the gap between the bronze door was too small. In the blink of an eye, it was completely closed. Damn it! Looking at the completely closed bronze door, Zhuowen couldn't help but curse. Mu Qinshu, who was beside him, frowned even more. She couldn't help but turn to Zhuowen and ask, "What should we do now?" "There's no other way. Now we can only join forces and see if we can blast open this door." Shaking his head slightly, Zhuowen said somewhat helplessly, "I'm afraid your idea won't work." However, Mu Qinshu shook her head and walked to the bronze gate. She stroked the carvings on the gate and said, "This bronze gate is made of meteorite. It is so hard that it can withstand a full-force attack from a warrior of the Imperial Power Realm. Even if its hardness has decreased with the passage of tens of thousands of years, it is still not something that we can break. Zhuowen's expression instantly became unsightly to the extreme when he heard this. He'd just discovered a trace of the Tempest Saint Talisman's clues, yet now he was instead trapped within the hall. Could it be that extreme joy begets sorrow? Hiss! A rustling sound, like the wind blowing through the leaves, suddenly rang out. Next, the two of them suddenly noticed that the surrounding space had suddenly distorted. The originally ancient-looking hall had actually disappeared. The surrounding space had distorted, making it impossible to distinguish north from south. A pink mist gradually spread out and covered the entire space. At the same time, a sweet fragrance accompanied the pink mist. It constantly filled the entire space, causing people to salivate when they smelled it. What's going on? Why did the hall suddenly disappear? Could it be a formation restriction? Thinking of this, Zhuowen's expression suddenly became quite unsightly. The last time he fought for the 9-wheel burning sky cauldron, he had fallen into a formation restriction. At that time, if Lu Yuanhua had not used a rank 4 origin formation and his strength had not increased greatly, they would probably have been trapped in the formation restriction. Therefore, Zhuowen had a headache when it came to these formation restrictions. Boy! This formation restriction is very unusual. It is actually a kind of illusory formation. If I'm not wrong, this formation should be the famous ecstasy incense formation. Hee. This formation restriction is very insidious. Once you fall into it, it's like falling into a place of eternal damnation. Xiao He had already appeared on Zhuowen's shoulder and said solemnly, "Ecstasy incense formation? Could it be more powerful than the formation of the 18 giant stone statues?" Hearing Xiao He's words, Zhuowen had an ominous premonition in his mind. The two are not on the same level. This ecstasy incense formation is much more powerful and insidious than the 18 giant stone statues. To put it bluntly, if an ancient martial art practitioner falls into this formation restriction, he will be burning with desire. There will be all kinds of illusions inside, leading the ancient martial art practitioner into a deeper abyss. If one's will is not strong enough, it is easy to indulge in it. In the end, the essence of the body will be absorbed by this formation restriction, making the power of the formation restriction stronger, Xiao He said solemnly. Zhuowen felt a chill. This formation restriction was indeed as insidious as Xiao He had said. It actually caused the human body's desire to create illusions. Moreover, what made Zhuowen even more terrified was that this formation restriction would absorb the ancient martial art practitioner's essence to increase its power. What an insidious formation restriction! It seems that Sir God Fenglei is not a good person. He actually set up such an obscene formation restriction in the cave dwelling, Zhuowen said speechlessly as his body trembled. In ancient times, Sir God Fenglei was a person who was neither good nor evil. He was even more eccentric and did not stick to one pattern. It is not strange for him to set up such a formation restriction in his cave dwelling. However, if you want to break this formation restriction, you have to keep your mind stable. As long as you can hold on for 3 days, this formation restriction will disappear because it cannot get the essence. As Xiao He spoke, she waved her right hand and a black mist suddenly turned into countless black needles, which were densely inserted into Zhuowen's acupuncture points. If you want to stay awake, you can only do so with heart-wrenching pain. Therefore, just in case, this Dragon Lord will first use the black needles to seal all the acupoints on your body. If your mind is not clear, the black needles on your acupoints will vibrate and stimulate your nerves, which can maintain your consciousness to a large extent. Therefore, young man, you have to work hard to hold on for 3 days. I will sleep first. Xiao He yawned lazily and actually fell asleep on Zhuowen's shoulder, which made Zhuowen roll his eyes. The pink mist became even denser, and the sweet fragrance in the air became even more alluring. Zhuowen's throat involuntarily twitched. Under the dual stimulation of the mist and the fragrance, Zhuowen's eyes became a little blurred. Suddenly, countless crisp laughter, like that of orioles, came into his ears. Around the pink mist, several tall figures began to appear. Squinting his eyes, Zhuowen finally saw the true faces of these figures. He saw 3 beautiful women in palace attire with their hair tied up like a waterfall. The women had red lips and white teeth. Their skin was whiter than snow, and there were spots of pink on their snow-white skin, like cherry blossoms scattered in the snow. The 3 young women in palace attire were devastatingly beautiful. Their beauty was unparalleled. Their watery eyes revealed an intoxicating gentleness, causing people to involuntarily sink into them and be unable to extricate themselves. Although the 3 young women in palace attire were peerlessly beautiful, there was still a gap between them and Mu Qinshue's demonic beauty. Although Zhuowen's eyes were flickering under the influence of the pink mist, he was still able to maintain a certain level of concentration. After seeing Mu Qinshue's fairy-like beauty, Zhuowen naturally had a certain level of resistance towards beautiful women. Taking a deep breath, Zhuowen silently sat cross-legged on the ground. He did not even look at the temptation of the 3 beautiful women in palace attire. The teasing laughter in his ears became clearer and clearer. He saw the 3 beautiful women in palace attire letting out seductive sounds, causing Zhuowen's eyelids to twitch involuntarily. He almost lost his mind. However, this was only the beginning. When the 3 beautiful women in palace attire saw that Zhuowen did not move, their watery eyes immediately stared resentfully at Zhuowen. Then, they began to undress. The sounds in his ears became more frequent. Zhuowen's breathing suddenly became hurried, and his eyes became incomparably red. Just as Zhuowen was about to lose his mind, the countless black needles on the acupuncture points all over his body suddenly buzzed. A heart-wrenching pain suddenly filled his entire body. This kind of pain was like thousands of needles piercing into his heart. Immediately, Zhuowen, who was about to lose his mind, regained his senses. Damn! Xiao, this is too fierce. I didn't expect it to be so painful. Even if I was in high spirits, under this kind of pain, it should have been completely extinguished. At this moment, Zhuowen, who had regained his consciousness, secretly rejoiced. If he had fallen into a trance just now, he was afraid that he would really be in danger. Fortunately, Xiao's black needles reminded him. Countless black needles stood erect on the acupuncture points all over his body. Every time Zhuowen was about to fall into a trance, the black needles would fiercely pierce his acupuncture points and stimulate his nerves, causing Zhuowen to instantly wake up. Therefore, he continuously switched back and forth between being in a trance and being awake. Time passed minute by minute and second by second. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. In these 2 days, Zhuowen had been enduring the intense pain of thousands of needles piercing his heart. There were a few times when he almost fainted from the pain. Of course, as time passed, the intensity of the hallucinations became more and more intense. However, Zhuowen still relied on his strong willpower to forcefully endure it. At this moment, his entire body was already drenched in cold sweat. This cold sweat was caused by the black needles piercing his acupuncture point. This is really a terrifying array. Even if one's willpower is even stronger, it would be difficult to endure for 3 days in this array. If it wasn't for the black needles piercing my acupuncture points, I'm afraid that I wouldn't even be able to endure for a day. As long as I can endure for 1 more day, I will be able to break this array. His chest continuously rose and fell as Zhuowen muttered to himself with a pale face. Rustle, rustle. A light sound of footsteps slowly came from behind him. Then, Zhuowen could clearly hear the sound of hurried breathing that could not be suppressed. Is this the same trick again? Looks like this ecstasy incense array is not the slightest bit new. Feeling the hurried breathing and indistinct moaning behind him, Zhuowen coldly laughed and sat on the ground without moving. He simply did not care about the movement behind him. However, unexpectedly, A pair of exquisitely carved jade-like hands suddenly reached for Zhuowen's neck and tightly hugged him from behind. The orchid-like hot air gently blew on Zhuowen's neck, causing a strange feeling of numbness. Hallucinations should not be able to touch me. How could it? Chapter 237. A beauty like an orchid, water-like autumn eyes, a tall nose, slightly raised eyebrows and black hair that scattered down like a waterfall. Wasn't the beautiful young lady that entered his eyes Mu Chenxue? However, at this moment, Mu Chenxue no longer had her original calm and indifference. Her clear eyes had been replaced by an intoxicated and fiery look. Her cherry-red little mouth opened slightly as a faintly discernible moan slowly drifted over. Hot air that smelled like orchid and musk blew out from her cherry-red little mouth and blew onto Zhuowen's neck, causing him to feel a wave of numbness. A pair of lotus root-like jade-like hands suddenly wrapped around Zhuowen's neck. Mu Chenxue's seemingly boneless body was like a water snake as she pounced into Zhuowen's embrace. A faint fragrance assailed his nostrils. Boom! The sweet dew-like fragrance was like a fuse that ignited an explosive, causing Zhuowen's eyes to instantly turn red and his breathing to become much heavier. Zhuowen, if you dare to touch me, I will definitely take your life when I wake up. Mu Chenxue powerlessly lay in Zhuowen's embrace. Her autumn eyes alternated between intoxication and clarity from time to time. Evidently, Mu Chenxue still retained a shred of rationality in the soul-enchanting incense array. However, this shred of rationality was like a lone boat in the middle of the ocean that could capsize at any time. Hearing these words, the corners of Zhuowen's mouth revealed a trace of a bitter smile. He had forgotten that he was not the only one who had fallen into the soul-enchanting incense array. There was also a peerless beauty like Mu Chenxue. Miss Mu, it is not me who is touching you now. It is you who is touching me. Gazing at the delicate body that was wriggling like a water snake in his embrace, Zhuowen forcefully suppressed the impulse in his heart and laughed bitterly. Upon hearing this, Mu Chenxue's porcelain-like pretty face immediately blushed, and her snow-white skin turned an alluring crimson. Although she wanted to maintain her rationality, the power of the soul-enchanting incense was getting stronger and stronger. Even though Mu Chenxue's personality was indifferent, she couldn't resist the temptation of the soul-enchanting incense, and finally succumbed to it. The fact that she was able to persist in this formation for 2 days already showed how strong this woman's willpower was. However, there was a limit to a person's strength, let alone a weak willpower. So on the 3rd day, Mu Chenxue finally fell into the trap of the ecstasy incense array. Under the guidance of the array, she found Zhuowen's location, which led to the current scene. Mu Chenxue didn't reply. Under the intense stimulation of the pink mist, she finally succumbed completely. Feeling the delicate body that was constantly wriggling in his embrace, the last bit of rationality in Zhuowen's eyes finally collapsed. Just as Zhuowen was about to pounce on the young lady in his embrace, the hundreds of black needles in his acupuncture points suddenly buzzed in unison. A heart-wrenching, intense pain once again pulled Zhuowen back to reality. Rip! The young lady's veil was directly torn apart, revealing her creamy skin. At this moment, her snow-white skin had already turned crimson, and the orchid-like fragrance became increasingly rich. A beast-like roar came from his throat. Zhuowen's forehead was full of cold sweat, and large beads of sweat flowed down his face, forming a thick layer of water on the ground. At this moment, Zhuowen was constantly pacing between extreme pleasure and extreme pain. On one side was the heart-wrenching pain of 10,000 needles, and on the other side was the allure of a beautiful woman. Pucci. Under the stimulation of these two contradictions, Zhuowen finally spat out a mouthful of blood, and his expression became extremely dispirited. Damn it! I've already endured for 2 days, I don't believe that I can't endure even on this last day. A fierce glint suddenly appeared in his eyes. Zhuowen simply closed his eyes and forcefully suppressed the impulse in his heart, forcing himself to calm down. Time passed by minute. Just as Zhuowen was enduring this torment, a cool feeling suddenly came from the acupuncture points all over his body. Then, the heart-wrenching pain receded like the tide, and Zhuowen suddenly felt the cool feeling in the acupuncture points all over his body become clearer, as if ice water had been poured into these acupuncture points. Boom! A low muffled sound rang out from within Zhuowen's body. Zhuowen only felt that his entire body had become extremely relaxed at this moment. Blankly opening his eyes, Zhuowen felt that his body was filled with a sense of power. This feeling of fullness that he had never felt before surprised Zhuowen in his heart. "I've actually broken through to the Earth King stage?" Zhuowen said to himself in disbelief as he clenched his hands. Although the soul-enchanting incense array is extremely insidious, if one can endure this array for 3 days, then this array will be completely broken, and the essence absorbed by this array will be transferred into the body of the person who breaks the array. Since you were able to endure for 3 days, you naturally received all the essence from this array, so it's normal for you to be able to break through. Xiaohei lazily yawned on his shoulder and laughed mischievously. Hearing this, Zhuowen was slightly delighted and softly muttered, "It seems that being trapped in the soul-enchanting incense array is not a bad thing. This can be considered a blessing in disguise." Xiaohei suddenly revealed a trace of a wretched smile, and pouted towards Zhuowen's chest as it said, "You really have a good eye, that little beauty is still lying in your arms." Looking at the disheveled young lady in his arms, the corners of Zhuowen's mouth revealed a trace of a bitter smile. At this moment, Mu Qinshue's clothes were almost torn into countless pieces, and more than half of her snow-white skin was exposed, looking extremely alluring. At this moment, Mu Qinshu was like a lazy little kitten, curled up in Zhuowen's arms, and fell into a deep sleep. At this moment, her exquisite jade-like nose opened and closed rhythmically, appearing quiet and tranquil. Obviously, the soul-enchanting incense array had caused great harm to Mu Qinshu, and once the array was broken, she completely fell into a deep sleep. Looking at such a beautiful scene in his arms, Zhuowen could not help but stare blankly. Mu Qinshu was originally the kind of woman with a peerless appearance and unparalleled temperament. When any man met such a beauty, he would be unable to help but fall head over heels for her, and Zhuowen was naturally no exception. Moreover, such a peerless beauty was currently curled up in his arms, and no matter how noble Zhuowen was, his heart could not help but become extremely hot. Quietly staring at the beauty in his arms for a long time, Zhuowen suddenly bent down and lightly kissed the young lady's red lips and said softly, "This kiss will be my reward for helping you break the soul-enchanting incense array." Feeling the delicate fragrance and sweetness on his lips, at the same time, the beautiful appearance of this woman from a day ago unexpectedly appeared in his mind. Zhuowen's heart could not help but beat a few times, and he was actually moved by this woman at this moment. Could this be the so-called love at first sight? Gently hugging the young lady in his arms, Zhuowen was absent-minded for a while. "Kid, this woman's background is very big, and perhaps the Qing Xian Empire is an ant-like existence in front of the power behind her. It can be said that the two of you are not people of the same world. If you want to be together, I'm afraid it will be very difficult." Seeing that Zhuowen had fallen into a state of absent-mindedness, Xiaohei's face revealed a rare serious expression. "I know that. After all, to be able to have the personal protection of an Emperor Realm powerhouse already shows how terrifying the power behind Mu Qinshu is." Thinking of Elder Qiu's terrifying strength, Zhuowen could not help but bitterly smile. "Let's wait for Mu Qinshu to wake up first. After all, I know my own limits. Perhaps we will not have the chance to meet again after we leave the large hall this time around." Taking off his jacket, Zhuowen gently draped it over the young lady in his arms, but his eyes contained a trace of emotion and faint melancholy. After gently placing the young lady on the ground, Zhuowen stood up and carefully observed the hall around him. As Zhuowen had broken the soul-enchanting incense array, the bronze door had also opened. What Zhuowen did not notice was that when he draped the jacket over the young lady's body, the young lady's slender eyelashes moved slightly. Her jade-like hands that were wrapped in the jacket slightly clenched, and she actually slowly opened her eyes. Her watery eyes stared at the back of the young man in front of her with a complicated expression. In the depths of her eyes there was even a trace of hidden bitterness. Even though her mind was a little muddled in the soul-enchanting incense array, she still remembered that the young man in front of her would rather endure the pain and vomit blood from his internal injuries than touch her. Thinking of this, the young lady's face revealed a trace of redness. A trace of emotion that she had never felt before suddenly burst forth from the depths of her heart, filling her entire heart. 15 minutes later, Mu Chenxue pretended to wake up. Her face was filled with indifference. Wearing Zhuowen's jacket, she silently walked out of the bronze door and followed the passageway to the outside of the hall. Zhuowen did not care about Mu Chenxue's attitude at this time. With a bitter smile, he silently followed behind the young lady. The two looked at each other without saying a word as they slowly walked out of the passageway. When a ray of light shone down from the outside world, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. After adjusting to the light, he began to observe the outside environment. Above the ruins of countless palaces in the outside world, the several thousand feet tall illusory figure still existed. At this moment, the illusory figure also saw Zhuowen and Mu Chenxue, who had appeared at the entrance of the palaces. With a furious roar, it charged straight towards them. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly, but Mu Chenxue did not panic. With a wave of her jade-like hand, she took out a golden Xing Yuan from her universe bag and showed it to the shadow avatar. Seeing the Xing Yuan, the shadow avatar was suddenly startled. A trace of sadness appeared on its face. It knelt down on one knee and bowed to the Xing Yuan from afar. The shadow avatar roared at the sky before it turned into endless lightning and disappeared. I didn't expect the Wind Thunder God's avatar to be afraid of his own Xing Yuan, Zhuowen muttered to himself as he glanced at the shadow avatar that disappeared not far away in surprise. "Young lady, are you okay?" As soon as the shadow avatar disappeared, a stream of light shot over and turned into a white-haired old man at the entrance of the hall. It was Old Qiu. At this time, Old Qiu's face was full of anxiety. "Old Qiu, don't worry. I'm fine. I found this Xing Yuan in the hall. Take it first and give it to Lord Father when we return to the sect. This Xing Yuan should be very helpful to Lord Father. However, I didn't find the Wind Thunder Saint symbol." Mu Chenxue shook her head slightly and handed the Xing Yuan in her hand to Old Qiu as she said softly. It turned out to be Xing Yuan. "Big sister, you have done a great service this time. Although this Xing Yuan is not as valuable as the Wind Thunder Saint symbol, it is still a priceless treasure. Lord Sect Master will probably reward you handsomely this time." Paramount Soul. Chapter 238. Chapter 238. Swear to God. Mu Chenxue's face did not show the slightest hint of joy. Her beautiful eyes glanced at the silent youth behind her before she suddenly said, "Elder Qiu, go to the Wind Thunder Divine Palace's Lightning Sea and wait for me there. Now, I have something to say to young Master Zhuo." Qiu Lao was startled. He frowned slightly as he glanced at Zhuowen and Mu Chenxue. He could sense that the two of them had become a little strange ever since they entered the hall. However, Elder Qiu wasn't worried about Mu Chenxue's safety. After all, Zhuowen's cultivation was too low for him to worry about. In his opinion, with Zhuowen's strength, it was impossible for him to defeat Mu Chenxue. Therefore, he nodded slightly and disappeared in a stream of light. As soon as Elder Qiu left, the atmosphere between the two became a little strange. "I'm leaving." Suddenly, Mu Chenxue turned around and looked at Zhuowen with her watery eyes. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he looked at the indifferent yet stunning face. He laughed dryly and said, "Oh, I see. Is this what you want to say to me? Or is that what you're thinking right now?" Mu Chenxue's eyes suddenly flashed with a trace of anger as she asked in a slightly loud voice. Zhuowen could not help but be startled as he gazed at the young lady who had suddenly become angry. However, his heart was filled with a bitter smile. The words in his heart were naturally not like that. He really wanted the young lady to stay and also really wanted to express his feelings to her. However, the faction behind the young lady caused Zhuowen's heart to be extremely hesitant, conflicted and distressed. This was because he knew that it was quite impossible for the two of them to be together. Once the young woman left this time, the trace of charming connection between the two of them in the hall vanished along with the wind, and it was like a dream that was soundless. Yeah, that's all I want to say. Zhuowen nodded with difficulty and said with a bitter smile. Right at this moment, a fragrant wind blew over. Zhuowen was startled as he felt a soft fragrance in his embrace. Mu Chenxue had unknowingly thrown herself into Zhuowen's embrace. Her exquisite nose rested on Zhuowen's neck as she said in a soft voice, "You can cut off the ties in the Great Hall, but I can't and I don't want to. You could have completely taken me in the ecstasy incense, but you didn't. Even at the risk of internal bleeding, you still kept your promise. But since you really want to cut off this tie, why did you kiss me after the ecstasy incense array was broken?" Mu Chenxue's words were very soft and delicate, but they exploded in Zhuowen's heart like thunder. Zhuowen looked stiffly at the girl in his arms and said with a bitter smile, "So you woke up a long time ago. I thought you weren't awake at that time, so it's the reward for breaking the formation? Don't you think that this reward is a little too heavy and precious?" Mu Chenxue suddenly interrupted Zhuowen's words. She rested her head on Zhuowen's shoulder and said in a soft voice with some resentment. Deeply staring at the girl in his arms, listening to her soft words, smelling the delicate fragrance of her delicate body, and gazing into the girl's gentle eyes, Zhuowen suddenly felt that the apprehension in his heart was unnecessary. Since it's too precious, I'll use my entire life to repay it. Taking a deep breath, Zhuowen suddenly bent down and pressed his lips on the girl's lips. Mu Chenxue did not reject. She closed her eyes and raised her head to receive Zhuowen's rough kiss. "Zhuowen, I'll be waiting for you at Jiaxun Academy. I know that you have many secrets and I also believe that you have great potential. There will be a day when you will break through the cocoon and become a butterfly. I'm waiting for the day when you can marry me in a proper manner." When Zhuowen came back to his senses, Mu Chenxue had already floated away. However, Zhuowen's mind was constantly replaying the words that Mu Chenxue had said before she left, as well as those affectionate and sweet red lips. Mu Chenxue, I, Zhuowen, swear to the heavens that there will be a day when I will stand at the pinnacle of the continent. I will tear down the clouds from the 9 heavens and pluck the stars from the sky for you as my dowry for marrying you. At this moment, Zhuowen's heroic spirit soared to the heavens as he roared towards the heavens. His loud and clear voice seemed to reverberate throughout the entire space. "Oh, young man, you're quite heroic." Xiao He patted Zhuowen's shoulder like an old man. However, his expression immediately turned serious. However, this Dragon Lord did not expect that this little girl would actually be from Jiaxun Academy. "It seems that this does not conflict with your original goal." Slightly nodding his head, Zhuowen grinned. "Entering Jiaxun Academy was our original goal. After all, the real holy ice-fire symbol is hidden there. Although that's the case, if you want to enter Jiaxun Academy, the difficulty is not small. Not only do you have to participate in the battle for the Tower of Vitality, but you also have to stand out. After that, you have to participate in the Battle of the 9 Counties and obtain first place. Only then will you have the qualifications to participate in Jiaxun Academy's entrance exam. Therefore, you still have a long road ahead of you." Xiao He clasped his hands behind his back as he shook his head and laughed foolishly. "Then just wait. Whether it is the battle for the Tower of Vitality or the Battle of the 9 Counties, I will obtain the final victory. Whoever stands in my way, I will kill them." Speaking up to here, Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. He had already made up his mind to enter Jiaxun Academy. "Then this Dragon Lord will wait and see your performance in 2 years. However, speaking of which, the most precious thing here should be the saint origin that Mu Qianxue obtained. The clue of the wind-thunder symbol is hidden in the cave mansion map, so there is no need for us to continue staying here. Xiao He said lazily. And it's time to leave. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhuowen suddenly stomped his foot and vanished on the spot. At the same time, after Mu Qianxue used her saint origin to make the wind-thunder god's clone disappear, the originally sealed entrance to the ancient cave mansion reappeared. Since the three marquises of the prefecture, the Jade Lady Star Court, and the ruling sword school were the 5 most powerful forces in the prefecture, most of the forces knew their limits and did not go too deep into the cave. They only searched for treasures outside the cave. They knew very well that the depths of the cave mansion were extremely dangerous. Entering it was very likely that their lives would be in danger. Moreover, even if they succeeded in entering the depths, it would be difficult for the 5 forces to obtain powerful treasures. Therefore, most of the forces left the cave mansion in advance. Before the cave mansion was sealed, apart from the 5 forces, only Zhuowen, Mu Qianxue, and Elder Qiu were left in the cave mansion. The open space outside the cave mansion was densely packed with countless figures. Most of these figures were looking at the black vortex above the open space with anticipation. This vortex was the entrance to the ancient cave mansion. Currently, only the 3 marquises, the Jade Maiden Star Court, and the Imperial Sword Sect had not appeared. Everyone knew that the most precious treasures in the ancient cave mansion were likely to be divided among the 5 forces. They were very eager to see what good things the 5 forces had obtained in the cave mansion. Phew! The entrance to the cave mansion is finally opened again. Although I don't know why it was closed before, since it can be opened again, Third Brother and Elderling should be able to come out safely. Seeing the vortex above the sky reappear, the 9th Commandery Princess heaved a sigh of relief with a relaxed smile on her face. Humph! This time, when Big Brother comes out, I will ask him to help me teach Zhuowen a lesson. He is so arrogant. It is not easy to let him off so easily after hurting the people of the House of Marquises of Baichuan. Seeing the vortex reappear, Su Cheng's face was also relaxed. Then, a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes as he spoke in a low voice. Su Cheng still could not forget Zhuowen's cold and murderous eyes in the ancient cave mansion. Obviously, Zhuowen really wanted to kill him. If it were not for the activation of his protective spiritual treasure and the timely arrival of the 9th Commandery Princess, he would have been dead by now. The 9th Commandery Princess glanced at the gloomy Su Cheng with slight dissatisfaction. Su Cheng's words and actions made her feel more and more disgusted. She also did not expect that the dignified heir of the House of Marquises of Baichuan could be so despicable. However, hearing Su Cheng's words, the 9th Commandery Princess could not help but think of the young man who was full of oppressive aura in the cave mansion. Even she did not expect that the nameless young man, whose strength was only at the corporeal Yang realm, could defeat Su Cheng, a warrior in the completion of the Human King realm. Moreover, she could feel that Zhuowen did not use his full strength at that time. She was afraid that he had a more terrifying trump card in his hand. But I haven't seen Zhuowen in the open space. Is he still in the cave mansion? Did he go deep into the cave mansion as well? The 9th Commandery Princess looked around but did not find the person she wanted to see. She frowned slightly and muttered to herself in a low voice. Hearing this, Su Cheng's face became gloomier. He sneered and said, "That bastard who overestimates himself will only die if he goes deep into the cave mansion. He is indeed a frog at the bottom of the well. Does he think that he is invincible just because he has some strength? Why don't he think about his own strength? What does his strength have to do with you? Do you think that you, who was defeated and injured by Zhuowen, are qualified to criticize him?" The 9th Commandery Princess turned her head and stared at Su Cheng coldly. She snorted disdainfully. Hearing this, Su Cheng was stunned and his face became extremely ugly. However, he did not refute. Instead, He lowered his head and looked gloomy. Boom! At this moment, the whirlpool in the sky suddenly shook. Then, two figures suddenly jumped out from the other side of the whirlpool and appeared above the two figures. The two figures, one old and one young, appeared. The old man was dressed in a gray robe. His eyes were shining and his breath was long and melodious. Obviously, the old man's strength was extraordinary. The young man was dressed in a purple robe. He was tall and slender with a well-proportioned body. Just by looking at his figure, one could tell that he was dignified and dignified. However, when everyone's eyes focused on the face of the purple-robed man, the scene suddenly fell into silence. Then, everyone covered their mouths and tried to hold back their laughter. This was because the purple-robed man's face was bruised and his cheeks were swollen. It was as if he had been severely beaten. Looking at the laughter from the crowd below, a trace of humiliation flashed across the purple-clothed man's eyes. He stomped his foot, and an endless wave of air immediately spread out, causing many martial warriors below to be shaken to the point of retreating. "Let me see who still dares to laugh?" the purple-robed man said coldly. "Complete Earth King stage? Who is this person? How can he be so strong? He seems to be Lu Yuanhua from the house of Marquis Qin. I remember that he is wearing a purple robe. Moreover, the old man beside him is Lingzhu, who is at the peak of the Heavenly King stage. What? This guy is Lu Yuanhua? How could his face be beaten up like this? Who did it? How could he beat up a complete Earth King stage expert like this?" Chapter 239. Beat up again. Looking at the noisy crowd below, Lu Yuanhua's expression became more and more unsightly. He waved his right hand, and a middle-aged man uncontrollably floated towards Lu Yuanhua. This middle-aged man was the one who was laughing the most wildly. At this moment, Lu Yuanhua's palm suddenly grabbed his neck and lifted him up. A powerful origin energy suddenly burst out, and the middle-aged man's eyes suddenly bulged. His entire body actually shattered, and countless blood sprayed out. I would like to see who else dares to laugh? After killing the middle-aged man in one move, Lu Yuanhua gloomily looked around as his cold voice slowly echoed. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. They didn't expect Lu Yuanhua to be so ruthless. Moreover, Lu Yuanhua was backed by a powerful force like the house of Marquis Qin. They couldn't afford to offend him. Humph! Lu Yuanhua snorted coldly. He stomped his feet and arrived at the open space where the 9th Commandery Princess and the others were. At this moment, the 9th Commandery Princess, Su Chang, and their subordinates were all looking at Lu Yuanhua with a swollen face in front of them. They couldn't think of anyone who could be a match for Lu Yuanhua in the cave mansion. With his strength at the completion of the Earth King stage and Lingzhu at his side, who was at the peak of the Heavenly King stage, even Clear Lotus of the Jade Lady Star Court couldn't beat LV Yuanhua to such a state. Although Clear Lotus's strength had reached the small mastery of the Heavenly King realm, LV Yuanhua still had a lot of trump cards. If he used all his trump cards, he wouldn't be much weaker than Clear Lotus. "Third brother, who beat you up like this? As far as I know, the other 4 superpowers in the abode don't have such strength." Seeing Lu Yuanhua coming over, the 9th Commandery Princess frowned and asked in a low voice, "Ninth sister, you don't have to worry about this. I will settle this score with that guy." Lu Yuanhua's face was gloomy as he said vaguely. With his arrogant character, he really couldn't say that he had been defeated by a nobody from a low-level city like Zhuowen. Seeing that LV Yuanhua's expression was not right, the 9th Commandery Princess stopped at the right time. She was smart enough not to ask further. However, she was full of doubts in her heart. She was wondering who had the strength to beat LV Yuanhua into such a mess. Whoosh! Just as the empty ground became a little quiet, another 3 sonic booms rang out. 3 figures appeared at the entrance of the vortex in the sky. They were 2 men and a woman. The woman had a graceful figure. Her face was covered by a veil, but a temperament that was difficult to hide was faintly revealed, causing many people to be mesmerized by her. The three people were Qing Lian, Su Mu, and Guang Mo. Qing Lian and Guang Mo were neatly dressed, but Su Mu was in rags. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like a beggar. There were 2 streaks of blood at the corners of his mouth, and his breath was weak. It was obvious that he had suffered a serious injury. The 3 of them looked around the space. After finding their teams, they went back to their teams. They didn't say a word and seemed to be extremely silent. "Big brother, how did you end up like this? Did you get anything from the abode?" When Su Mu came down, Su Chong came forward and asked worriedly. Su Mu smiled bitterly and said helplessly, "There were so many unforeseen events in the abode. Even an Emperor Realm expert appeared. How could we get any benefits? The one who gained the most this time should be Zhuowen." At this point, Su Mu glanced at Lv Yuanhua, who was standing nearby with a gloomy expression, and promptly stopped talking. Su Mu, what is the meaning of this?" Lv Yuanhua abruptly turned around and coldly stared at Su Mu. "Nothing? I just feel that Brother Liu's trip to the cave this time is really too unlucky. Originally, with Brother Liu and Elder Ling's strength, obtaining the 9-wheel burning sky cauldron should not be a problem. However, I didn't expect that Zhuowen would appear halfway." Speaking up to here, the corners of Su Mu's mouth revealed a mocking smile. His face was full of gloating. Although their conversation was not loud, it was not soft either. Su Chong and the 9th Commandery Princess heard it clearly. When they heard the name Zhuowen, their eyes were fixed, and there was a trace of disbelief on their faces. From Su Mu's words, it seemed that the most precious treasure in the abode had been taken by the unknown Zhuowen. Looking at Lu Yuanhua's darkening face, the 9th Commandery Princess was even more confused. What Su Mu said might be true, but how did Zhuowen get the treasure from the hands of so many experts? This was the question that puzzled the 9th Commandery Princess the most. She did not believe that Zhuowen, who was only a human king, could contend with the experts of the 5 superpowers. Whoosh! At this moment, another figure dashed out of the whirlpool. Everyone opened their eyes and looked over. When they found that the figure was just an ordinary teenager, they lost interest. This figure was Zhuowen, who had just come out of the abode. At this moment, Zhuowen found that there were so many superpowers in the open space. His eyes flickered, and he stomped on the ground and dashed towards the distance. Zhuowen was originally an unknown figure. Most of the superpowers did not even know who Zhuowen was. Therefore, when Zhuowen appeared, he immediately slipped away and did not attract any attention. "Zhuowen, you have taken the earthly spiritual treasure 9-wheel burning sky cauldron from the abode. Do you want to leave just like that?" Suddenly, a thunderous shout resounded in the open space. Then, Lu Yuanhua stomped on the ground and stood in front of Zhuowen, with a gloomy smile on his face. "What? There is an earthly spiritual treasure in the abode? And the earthly spiritual treasure is with this young man? This young man's aura is only at the human king realm. How could he take the earthly spiritual treasure from the 5 superpowers with such strength? Could it be that Lu Yuanhua is deceiving us? It shouldn't be. After all, Lu Yuanhua is the crown prince of the house of Marquis Qin. If he had taken the earthly spiritual treasure, he would not hide it. After all, no one dares to steal from the house of Marquis Qin. Perhaps that young man really has an earthly spiritual treasure. It is better to believe it than not. Lu Yuanhua's words were like a bomb that ignited the fuse. Suddenly, the crowd was in an uproar. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone's eyes were focused on the young man who was stopped by Lu Yuanhua. Heavy breaths rose and fell one after another. In the crowd, Su Mu, Qing Lian, and Guang Mo looked thoughtfully at Lu Yuanhua. No wonder Lu Yuanhua did not leave in a hurry after he came out. So this was his plan. Although Lu Yuanhua was not a match for Zhuowen now, Zhuowen was only one person. As the saying goes, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. Even if Zhuowen was very strong, he could not win against thousands of cultivators in the open space. Moreover, among these cultivators, there were hundreds of auras at the human king realm. There were even more than a dozen Earth King realm cultivators. With such a terrifying lineup, even a peak Heavenly King realm cultivator would find it difficult to resist the joint forces of so many cultivators. Sensing the uproar in the open space, Zhuowen's expression changed greatly. He stared at Lu Yuanhua in front of him with some anger and shouted, "Lu Yuanhua, you loser, do you think I didn't beat you enough last time? Do you want me to help you again?" Lu Yuanhua's expression changed, and some veins appeared on his forehead. He shouted angrily, "You bastard, you still dare to be so arrogant when you are about to die. There are thousands of cultivators here. Do you think you can leave with a treasure like the 9-wheel burning sky cauldron?" Rustle, rustle, rustle. Figures suddenly gathered around Zhuowen. These cultivators looked coldly at the young man in the center, and deep greed was hidden in the depths of their eyes. An earthly spiritual treasure. This kind of treasure could allow an unknown small force to develop into a powerful force. No cultivator would not be tempted by an earthly spiritual treasure. Brat. An earthly spiritual treasure is not something you can have. If you know what's good for you, you'd better obediently hand it over. Yes, hand over the spiritual treasure and we will spare your life. Kid. A wise man submits to circumstances. You only have two choices now. Either hand over the spiritual treasure or die. Thousands of martial artists released the powerful essence energy in their bodies one after another and fiercely pressured Zhuowen. The shouts of thousands of people practically converged into innumerable rumbling echoes in the open space. Ha! Zhuowen, so what if you obtain the 9-wheel burning sky cauldron in the end? Do you think you can leave this place alive with so many cultivators surrounding you? Lu Yuanhua's face was filled with a happy smile. He looked at Zhuowen as if he was looking at a dead man. You naggy fellow, it seems that the lesson I taught you in the cave was not enough? Zhuowen's eyes were indifferent. His face did not show the slightest bit of fear because of the shouts of thousands of people. He stomped his feet on the ground and his whole body was like an arrow that left the bow. He suddenly rushed towards Lu Yuanhua. At this time, Zhuowen's cultivation had just reached the small mastery of Earth King realm. His strength was several times stronger than before. Now, Lv Yuanhua's strength was only at the great circle of Earth King realm. Therefore, Zhuowen didn't take Lv Yuanhua seriously. Do you really think that your strength is higher than mine? When I was in the cave, I had just used a 4th grade origin array. My yuan qi was empty, and you took advantage of it. After a few days of recuperation, I have already recovered from my injuries. You won't have any chance. Lu Yuanhua's eyes flashed with a fierce light. The yuan qi in his body suddenly exploded. Will you die if you don't brag? Today, I will beat you until your mother can't recognize you. When Lu Yuanhua wanted to rush forward and teach Zhuowen a lesson, Zhuowen suddenly disappeared. Then, Zhuowen's cold voice came from behind him. At this time, Zhuowen was holding a jade card in his hand. It was the teleportation card that could be used to teleport. As soon as he rushed out, he activated the teleportation card and appeared behind Lu Yuanhua in an instant. Lifting his foot, Zhuowen stomped on Lu Yuanhua's back. The powerful force suddenly made Lu Yuanhua lose his balance. Then, he fell on the ground with his head heavy and his feet light. Looking at Lu Yuanhua, who was instantly stepped on by Zhuowen, the scene suddenly became extremely quiet. Everyone looked at the Lu Yuanhua, who fell on the ground and was stepped on by Zhuowen. They really could not imagine that Lu Yuanhua, who was at the complete Earth King realm, could not withstand a single blow from Zhuowen. In an instant, he was stepped on by Zhuowen. However, a scene that made everyone feel dizzy appeared. Chapter 240. Chapter 240 Slay 1,000 men pa pa pa. The sound of feet slamming into cheeks was so clear and melodious in the open space that everyone could not help but feel dizzy. They could only stare blankly at LV Yuanhua, whose cheeks were being continuously trampled under the feet of the youth, as the atmosphere of the scene instantly became exceptionally strange. The ninth commandery princess opened her mouth slightly. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Is he really Zhuowen? Third brother is actually being stepped on by this guy. Lu Yuanhua, as the third prince of the house of Marquis Qin, had a high position and power, a dignified appearance, and was also one of the top geniuses of the house of Marquis Qin. But now, he was being trampled under the feet of an ordinary youth, and was being trampled continuously. At this time, Lu Yuanhua's heart was filled with shock and anger. He didn't think that Zhuowen would suddenly appear behind him, so he suffered a loss. But when he wanted to get up, a power that even he found hard to resist came from under Zhuowen's feet. This power was far stronger than the last time he met Zhuowen. This bastard actually advanced to the Earth King stage? How is this possible? A few days ago, he was only a mortal king. How did he reach that level in just a few days? Lu Yuanhua finally felt a sliver of fear when he sensed the power beneath Zhuowen's feet. The speed of the young man's advancement was too terrifying. He still remembered that a month ago the young man was only at the corporeal yang stage. At that time, the young man was simply looking up to him. If it wasn't for Master Karaki's intervention, LV Yuanhua would have been killed by LV Yuanhua with a wave of his hand. But now, the ant-like existence of the young man was trampling on him at will. This made LV Yuanhua feel humiliated and even more terrified. Low-level Earth King realm? In just a few days, Zhuowen has advanced again. Lingju's old face was filled with shock when he sensed Zhuowen's powerful aura. Hearing Lingju's words, the ninth commandery princess, Su Chang and Su Mu's expressions changed drastically. Even they didn't expect Zhuowen to reach the Earth King realm unknowingly. Puff! With a fierce kick, LV Yuanhua's cheeks immediately swelled up. Blood mixed with his teeth spat out, forming a blood column in the air. Zhuowen! That's enough. It won't do you any good if you continue fighting. It will only make you an enemy of the house of Marquis. Lingju could not stand it anymore. Although he did not have a good impression of LV Yuanhua, the latter was still the third prince of Mu Qin Marquis Mansion. He could not sit by and watch. Humph! I know what I'm doing. I don't need you to teach me. With a cold smile, Zhuowen kicked Lu Yuanhua's chest with the tip of his right foot. The powerful force made Lu Yuanhua fly into the air. Then, like a withered leaf, he flew toward Lingju. Lingju caught him and looked at Lu Yuanhua, who was dying in his arms. He sighed and said, "Third young master, Zhuowen has become so powerful that we can't defeat him. I think we should give up." Lu Yuanhua's eyes were filled with shame and anger. He spat out another mouthful of blood and fainted. He was so angry. Looking at the thousands of warriors who were slowly gathering around him, Zhuowen's eyes became colder and colder. He said indifferently, "Do you also want the Earth Spirit treasure? If you have the guts, then come and take it." Zhuowen had defeated Lu Yuanhua so easily. Although it had a certain deterrent effect and caused the surrounding warriors to stop, the temptation of the Earth Spirit treasure was too great. Even if Zhuowen was very strong, he was only one person, while there were thousands of them. Everyone attack. This kid is weak and alone. Moreover, he's only one person, while we have so many people. Attack together, kill him and take the Earth Spirit treasure in his hands. That's right. No matter how strong this kid is, he's only one person. We have thousands of people. If we join forces, this kid won't be able to do anything. Someone in the crowd started to jeer. The fear in the hearts of those who were originally shrinking back was replaced by greed at this moment. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. 10 figures suddenly flew out from the crowd. These 10 figures were full of energy and vigorous auras. The yuan power faintly emitted from their bodies caused the air to boil. These 10 figures were actually Earth King realm warriors. 10 Earth King Realm warriors were joining forces to take down the youth before them. Boom, boom, boom. The youth stood in place, slightly raised his head, and looked indifferently at the 10 figures around him. There was not the slightest trace of fear on his face, but he did not have the slightest intention to attack. One of the figures laughed savagely when he saw Zhuowen being so arrogant, and his hand transformed into a claw that suddenly slapped down towards the top of Zhuowen's head while he sneered. "Kid, aren't you being too arrogant? Don't tell me you don't want to attack?" However, the smile on the figure's face soon froze. After the youth's lips curled into a mocking smile, a black figure instantly blocked in front of the youth. It was a middle-aged man with a resolute expression and a dull face. It was Zhuowen's reverse spirit puppet. The reverse spirit puppet was expressionless. Its steel-like arm slammed into the figure's claw. With a cracking sound, the powerful force shattered the figure's hand like a hot knife through butter. Poochie! Before the figure could react, he felt an intense pain in his arm. His entire body flew backwards as blood gushed out of his mouth. After the reverse spirit puppet instantly repelled the figure, it tapped its feet and charged towards the other 9 figures like a bolt of black lightning. Its attack method was simple and crude. With just a single punch, it completely crippled the 9 figures. Bang! 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 Miserable shrieks rang out. The 10 Earth King Realm experts, who were originally imposing, were now like dead dogs, rolling on the ground. Their miserable and distant cries caused many of the surrounding cultivators to feel a chill run down their spines. Although there were thousands of warriors around, there were only a dozen or so who had reached the Earth King realm. Now that 10 of them had been crippled by Zhuowen in an instant, the remaining Earth King realm warriors could be counted with one hand. However, what truly terrified these thousands of warriors was the tall middle-aged man who had suddenly appeared beside Zhuowen. If they were not wrong, the strength that the middle-aged man had displayed just now had already reached the peak of the Heavenly King realm. Other than the Lingzhu, who else could stop him? It's actually a Heavenly King realm expert. I never thought that Zhuowen would have such an expert protecting him. No wonder he was able to snatch the Earth-rank soul treasure from the 5 great forces. Looks like we've kicked an iron plate. The Earth-rank soul treasure isn't that easy to snatch. The thousands of warriors who had surrounded Zhuowen finally felt a trace of fear in their hearts. They knew that with the existence of a Heavenly King realm warrior, even if they had the absolute advantage in numbers, they would not be able to snatch the Earth-rank soul treasure from the youth in front of them. Thinking of this, the greed in the eyes of these warriors gradually faded and was replaced by a trace of clarity. They shook their heads and actually planned to disperse. They no longer surrounded Zhuowen and instead opened up a path. "Did I allow you to leave? Just now, when you saw that I was weak, all of you were like mad dogs, wanting to kill me and snatch my treasures. Now that you see that you're no match for me, you want to leave? Do you really think that I, Zhuowen, am so easy to bully?" Ignoring the path that the crowd had made way for him, Zhuowen looked around with an extremely cold gaze. His indifferent voice rang out word by word. Zhuowen knew that if he did not have the strength to truss a chicken today, he would have already died an unnatural death. Zhuowen knew that if he did not show his strength, such a thing would probably happen again in the future. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's eyes were filled with dense killing intent. At this moment, his strength had greatly increased, and he even had the 9-wheel burning heaven cauldron and the ice-fire holy talisman as his trump card. It seemed that it was time to increase his deterrence, and the best way to increase his deterrence was to kill. What an arrogant brat. Although you have the protection of a Heavenly King realm warrior, and we can't hurt you, it's impossible for you to keep 1,000 of us here by yourself. One of the few remaining Earth King realm warriors in the crowd said coldly. Is that so? Zhuowen sneered and patted his Qinquan bag. A palm-sized copper cauldron suddenly appeared in his palm. Then, Zhuowen stomped his foot and threw his right hand. His left hand formed a few seals, and the copper cauldron in his hand suddenly expanded at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. In the end, it turned into a giant cauldron that was a few 100 feet tall. Since all of you want the earth-rank spiritual treasure so much, I'll let all of you see its power. 9-wheel burning heaven array, open! With a loud shout, Zhuowen formed a sword with his right hand and pointed it at the copper cauldron. 2 of the 9 fire vents on the burning sky cauldron immediately shot out 2 strange flames, one blue and one green. The blue flames were mixed with lightning. Rolling thunder rumbled as the lightning and fire merged. Waves of explosive energy were continuously emitted. The green flames turned into a green lotus and slowly bloomed. Countless green sparks fell like meteors. In an instant, the open space within a radius of 10 miles was almost enveloped by the 3,000 green lotus flame and the 9 heavens thunder flame. Endless waves of air and blazing high temperatures almost vaporized the air. The soft soil had also dried up and cracked, and the surroundings were filled with scorching air and temperature. Rumble! Zhuowen stomped his feet, and 2 green fire lotuses appeared beneath his feet. He quietly floated in the air as he indifferently looked down at the terrified crowd below. What's going on? How can these flames be so powerful? Looking at the sea of fire in all directions, fear appeared on all the warriors' faces. They realized that no matter how they attacked, they couldn't penetrate the sea of fire in front of them. Their attacks were like clay oxen entering the sea and were completely useless. Chapter 241. Favor, Zhuowen. Please forgive us. We were momentarily blinded by greed, so we listened to Lu Yuanhua's words and actually wanted to snatch the treasure from your hands. Yeah. We know we're wrong. We'll never do it again. We'll take a detour when we see you in the future. As long as you don't kill me, I'm willing to become your slave and serve you for the rest of my life. The endless sea of fire was filled with the miserable cries and pleas of countless warriors. At this moment, everyone's hearts were filled with horror. The young man in front of them was too terrifying. He actually killed them just like that. It's too late now. If you want to repent, then wait until your next life. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with coldness as he stomped his feet on the ground, stepping on the green fire lotus as he arrived above the giant cauldron. Bang bang bang! His right hand suddenly knocked on the cauldron lid of the 9-wheel burning sky cauldron 3 times. The fire vents suddenly trembled, and even more intense flames surged out in all directions. The sea of fire that was originally dozens of miles wide instantly expanded to hundreds of miles. Outside the sea of fire, Lingzhu, the 9th Commandery Princess, Su Mu, Qing Lian, and Guang Mo led their men and horses to open up their primordial energy shields. They kept retreating until they were dozens of miles away from the sea of fire. They were shocked and inexplicably looked at the towering pillar of fire not far away. What a powerful soul treasure and a powerful formation! What a ruthless and decisive young man! Qing Lian stood in front of the group and looked at the sea of fire. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she softly exclaimed. Lingzhu, the 9th Commandery Princess, and Su Mu smiled bitterly when they heard Qing Lian's praise. Their eyes were filled with fear. Originally, they had thought that the trip to the ancient era's cave this time around would only be a competition between the 5 great powers. However, no one had expected that a young man who was originally not noticed by anyone would actually have the last laugh. Right now, his strength had greatly increased and he was able to fight against 1,000 people alone. The faint sound gradually faded away, and the towering pillar of fire in the distance slowly receded, revealing the scene within a radius of several hundred kilometers. There were originally thousands of cultivators within 100 miles, but at this moment there was only a small mountain of ashes. This was the only trace left after thousands of cultivators were incinerated by the blazing fire. Rustle! A cool breeze blew past and the ashes that were piled up like a mountain drifted away. Thousands of warriors whose strength was above the human king realm had turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. This shocking scene was still vividly displayed in front of the warriors on the open ground. Several thousand human monarchs were annihilated just like that? Is this really possible? The ninth commandery princess stared blankly at the ashes that were scattered all over the sky. Her delicate body trembled involuntarily, and she could not help murmuring. Su Mu's eyes were also filled with fear. He glared fiercely at Su Chong beside him and coldly said, "Second brother, don't provoke this kid in the future. He was able to defeat Lu Yuanhua at such a young age, and now he has killed thousands of cultivators by himself. I'm afraid we can't afford to provoke this kid." Su Chong was already in a daze with his mouth wide open. He sat down on the ground and his legs trembled violently. He was also shocked by Zhuowen's ruthless means. He knew that if Zhuowen wanted to kill him now, it would be as easy as crushing an ant. This was because there were many cultivators among the thousands who were more powerful than him. "Big brother, this Zhuowen has no background at all. Do you think our house of Marquis of Baichuan will be afraid of him?" After calming down a little, Su Chong forced himself to be calm and asked Su Mu. "Humph. Of course, our house of Marquis of Baichuan is not afraid of this kid. However, this kid's potential is so great that even I am a little scared. If we want to go against this kid, we must get rid of him as soon as possible. Otherwise, we may be the unlucky ones. Lu Yuanhua is the best example. Do you want to follow in Lu Yuanhua's footsteps?" Su Mu stared coldly at Su Chong and said. Feeling the coldness in Su Mu's eyes, Su Chong trembled all over and lowered his head silently. The resentment in his heart towards Zhuowen had weakened a lot at this moment. Thump, thump, thump. A figure slowly walked out of the remaining power of the Sea of Fire. There were even traces of lightning and green sparks spreading in the figure's body. At this moment it was quite dazzling and colorful. Zhuowen glanced indifferently at the stunned crowd not far away and said indifferently, "Is there anyone else who wants to take the 9-wheel burning sky cauldron from me?" As soon as these words came out, the open space fell into a strange silence. Everyone's faces showed a wry smile. "You have just killed thousands of human king realm cultivators. Who has the guts to take something from you? Since there's no one else, I'll leave first." Looking at the silent open space, Zhuowen spoke again. Just as he was about to leave, a clear voice suddenly rang out. "Wait!" The clear voice instantly attracted everyone's attention. When they realized that the one who called out Zhuowen was the 9th commandery princess of the house of Marquis Qin, they could not help but be stunned. "What's the matter?" Zhuowen glanced indifferently at the 9th commandery princess and said indifferently. Feeling the attention of the crowd, the 9th commandery princess's pretty face could not help but redden. She bit her lower lip and looked at the young man in front of her with a complicated expression. She said, "Are you really Zhuowen from Rattan Armor City?" The 9th commandery princess could not reconcile the young man in front of her, who had easily defeated her third brother Lu Yuanhua and killed thousands of human king realm cultivators, with the young man who could only look up to her in the competition for places. "Why not? If the commandery princess has nothing else to say, I'll leave first." Zhuowen frowned slightly. He did not expect that the 9th commandery princess would only ask him to stay for such nonsense. Seeing Zhuowen's impatient attitude, the 9th commandery princess's pretty face turned pale. She bit her lower lip and said, "The thousands of people you killed today were basically all warriors from the forces in the commandery capital. You've killed so many people that I'm afraid the forces in the commandery capital will not let you go. Even if you're not afraid of these forces, your family is different." Hearing this, Zhuowen's face suddenly darkened. What the 9th commandery princess said was right. He frowned slightly and said, "I'll deal with this myself. If you still want to recruit me, you don't have to mention it anymore. Today I've defeated Lu Yuanhua, so Lu Yuanhua and I are irreconcilable. If I join the house of Marquis Qin, I'll simply walk into a trap." Zhuowen's resolute refusal made the ninth commandery princess's pretty face turn even paler. Her lips trembled, but she did not say anything in the end. Ha ha! Young Master Zhuo, you're indeed a man of noble character and unquestionable integrity. You can even refuse the invitation of the house of Marquis Qin. No wonder you could refuse Qing Lian's invitation so decisively in the cave mansion. An aureole-like laughter slowly sounded. Qing Lian, whose face was covered by a veil, walked out of the group. Her beautiful watery eyes stared straight at Zhuowen. The forces behind those thousands of warriors can be controlled by the Jade Lady Star Court for you. In the future, they won't cause trouble for the Zhuo family. Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes moved slightly. He said in a low voice, Miss Qing Lian, you're really brave. But I've said that I won't join the Jade Lady Star Court, let alone any other forces. Young Master Zhuo, don't worry. I'm not asking you to join the Jade Lady Star Court. I just want you to owe us a favor. For you to be able to defeat LV Yuanhua at such a young age already shows that you have boundless potential. Qing Lian is certain that in the Essence Qi Tower battle 2 years later, you will definitely shine brilliantly. So, in the Battle of the Vitality Tower in 2 years, I hope young Master Zhuo can help us. What do you think? This is a fair deal. When Qing Lian spoke until here, she actually winked in a rather playful manner. That moment of charm immediately caused the eyes of quite a number of martial artists to reveal an intoxicated expression. Zhuowen was stunned, and a trace of joy appeared on his face. Qing Lian's condition just solved Zhuowen's current problem. In terms of trump cards, Zhuowen was no longer afraid of Heavenly King Realm warriors. Perhaps even a half-step Ultimate Emperor Realm warrior would not be a threat to him. Moreover, the county capital was so far away from Vine Armor City. If those forces wanted to capture him, Zhuowen could completely avoid them. However, the Zhuo family could not. After all, the Zhuo family had thousands of people. They could not hide like him. If the forces in the county capital could not find Zhuowen, they would definitely find the Zhuo family to settle the score. Qing Lian's proposal was what Zhuowen wanted. Zhuowen thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Thank you, Miss Qing Lian. This time, Zhuowen owes the Jade Lady Star Court a favor. In the Battle of the Vitality Tower in 2 years, this one will definitely do his best to help the Jade Lady Star Court." Seeing that Zhuowen had agreed, a smile appeared on Qing Lian's pretty face. It was like 100 flowers blooming. After saying that, Zhuowen did not say anything else. With a stomp of his foot, his entire body shot into the distance like an arrow released from a bow. Now, Zhuowen was in a hurry to return to the Zhuo family. He knew that the news of him obtaining the Earth-rank soul treasure would spread very quickly. At that time, the Zhuo family would most likely become the target of public criticism. Zhuowen had gained a lot in the ancient cave mansion. More importantly, Zhuowen had collected a considerable amount of puppet materials in his Qianquan bag. He knew that if he wanted to increase the strength of the Zhuo family, he would have to refine puppets first. Once he refined a large number of Human King and Earth King puppets, Zhuowen would not be afraid even if the forces around Rattan Armor City were to stir up trouble. Looking at Zhuowen's gradually disappearing figure, the atmosphere in the open space suddenly became much more relaxed. Lingju looked at the somewhat dispirited Lu Yuanhua in her arms and sighed softly. Zhuowen is really a dragon among men. If he does not fall, he will have a place among the experts of the Qing Xian Empire in the future. Surprisingly, when Lingju spoke, no one in the open space refuted her word. Instead, they lowered their heads and fell into deep thought. Chapter 242. To justify oneself, a cool breeze gently blew past, lifting up the dusky yellow leaves on the ground, indicating that it was already autumn. Whoosh! At this moment, there were already many youths in the Zhuo family's large martial arts practice field. They were constantly waving their arms, and waves of fist wind whistled out as if they were tearing through the air. The sound was neat and distant, and it was like a symphony that resounded in the martial arts practice field. Within the training grounds, a middle-aged man with a tall and straight figure stood proudly. His slightly focused gaze contained some coldness as he looked at the many youths within the training grounds who were displaying their postures and whistling fist winds. The middle-aged man was the eldest son of the Zhuo family. He was also Zhuowen's uncle, Zhuo Baitian. Ever since the birth of the Zhuo family's Zhuowen, there had been countless incidents and sensations in Rattan Armor City. All the young warriors in Rattan Armor City looked up to Zhuowen as their role model. They all imagined that one day, they would be as talented as Zhuowen. As for the Zhuo family members, they were naturally the most enthusiastic. Countless of the younger generation in the family had set off a frenzy of cultivation. Even some of the younger generation who had never cultivated before had proposed to cultivate one after another. After all, in every youth's heart, there was a dream of becoming a hero, and Zhuowen was the hero that they wanted to become the most. At the age of 15, he had emerged as an outer sect disciple and defeated the strongest member of the Zhuo family, Zhuo Tian. In the Battle of the Market, he had fought against the combined forces of 5 people from the Wang family alone and won the final victory. In the Battle of the Wang family, Zhuowen had fought against 2 cultivators of the Qing realm and finally wiped out the Wang family and the Qin family from Rattan Armor City. Such a glorious battle record had already made many people of the same age and even the older generation feel ashamed. In just 1 year, Zhuowen, an unknown member of the Zhuo family's younger generation, had become a first-class expert in Rattan Armor City. He had even secured the position of the strongest person in the younger generation. Therefore, the Zhuo family had once set off a frenzy of cultivation. Almost all of the younger generation had gathered in the martial arts practice field to learn the basics of martial arts. As the eldest son of the Zhuo family, Zhuo Xiangding had naturally pushed Zhuo Baitian out to teach these hot-blooded youths. Deng deng deng! The sound of hurried footsteps suddenly broke the atmosphere of the martial arts practice field. Zhuo Baitian frowned slightly and looked at the entrance of the martial arts practice field with slight displeasure. At the entrance, 3 people suddenly walked in. Looking at the 3 people who had suddenly barged in, the displeasure on Zhuo Baitian's face instantly froze and was immediately replaced by shock. This was because the 3 people who had appeared at the entrance were the governor of Rattan Armor City, Gu Yu Tian, the vice-governor, Gu Lai, and the lofty grandmaster Tsang Mu. The 3 most prestigious people in Rattan Armor City had actually all come. The displeasure on Zhuo Baitian's face instantly disappeared. His face immediately beamed with happiness as he quickly stepped forward to welcome them. He said respectfully, "Governor, Vice-Governor, and Grandmaster Tsang Mu, I didn't expect the 3 of you to have time to come to our Zhuo family. May I know the reason for your visit?" There was a trace of urgency on the 3 people's faces. With Zhuo Baitian's ability to observe people's expressions, he naturally noticed it immediately. He couldn't help but feel a knot in his heart as he faintly had a bad premonition. "Baitian, is your family head here? We have an important matter to discuss." Gu Yu Tian's face was full of seriousness as he said rather seriously, "The family head has always been in the Battle Spirit Pavilion? For the 3 of you to come here in such a hurry, what has happened?" Zhuo Baitian's heart skipped a beat as he asked cautiously. "Let's go. Bring us to the Battle Spirit Pavilion. This matter is of great importance and must be discussed with the Zhuo family head." Grandmaster Tsang Mu's eyes narrowed as he said cautiously, "All right. I will bring the 3 of you to the Battle Spirit Pavilion." Seeing the seriousness in the 3's tone, Zhuo Baitian also knew that the important matter they were talking about was definitely not ordinary. Therefore, Zhuo Baitian casually called out to the young man in the martial arts practice field and hurriedly brought the 3 of them to the depths of the Zhuo family. "I didn't expect the governor, vice-governor, and Grandmaster Tsang Mu to come to our Zhuo family. I really didn't expect our Zhuo family to be so influential." Our Zhuo family has now become the #1 family in Vine Armor City. The other factions simply cannot stand shoulder to shoulder with our Zhuo family. Our strength has already faintly caught up to the City Lord's mansion. It is only natural that we are able to obtain the City Lord's attention. Don't forget that the reason our Zhuo family has the status and power we have today is all because of Senior Zhuowen. Otherwise, our Zhuo family would not have the honor to have the 3 strongest people in Rattan Armor City gather at the Zhuo family. Yes, Senior Zhuowen is the pride of our Zhuo family. Moreover, he is so young. If I could have 1% of Senior Zhuowen's strength, no, 1,000th of it, I would be satisfied. Watching the 4 people leave in a hurry, the young men in the martial arts practice field also began to discuss noisily. When they talked about Zhuowen, their faces were filled with respect and admiration. They knew very well that the reason the Zhuo family could become so prosperous was because of Zhuowen. The Battle Spirit Pavilion was located in the deepest part of the Zhuo family. It was an extremely large courtyard. In the center of the courtyard was a rather magnificent pavilion. At this moment, on the top floor of the pavilion, an old man with white hair slowly opened his eyes. His bright gaze stared straight outside the courtyard. I didn't expect Gu Yu Tian, Gu Lai, and Grandmaster Tsang Mu to come visit at the same time. Could it be that something big has happened? Could it be that this big matter is related to our Zhuo family? The old man was the head of the Zhuo family, Zhuo Xiangding. After muttering a few words, Zhuo Xiangding took a step forward and disappeared from the pavilion. Under Gu Yu Tian's lead, the trio finally arrived at the Battle Spirit Pavilion. At this moment, in the courtyard before the Battle Spirit Pavilion, Zhuo Xiangding was already standing there with his head held high and his chest puffed out. He looked at the 4 people with a smile on his face. You don't visit a temple without a cause. For the 3 of you to suddenly come to my Zhuo family, you must have something important to discuss. Zhuo Xiangding smiled slightly. With a flick of his finger, a golden light flashed out. A stone table and 5 stone stools appeared in front of him. The head of the Zhuo family is indeed astute. This time, we do have something extremely important to discuss. Moreover, this matter is related to Zhuowen, Gu Yu Tian said with an extremely solemn expression after they sat down. It's about Zhuowen? Did something happen to Zhuowen? I remember that half a month ago, he left the Zhuo family for the ancient cave dwelling. Could it be that he met with danger in the ancient cave dwelling? When he heard that it was about Zhuowen, Zhuo Xiangding's body suddenly tensed up as he spoke with a nervous expression. Gu Yu Tian, Gu Lai, and Grandmaster Tsang Mu looked at each other. However, a trace of a bitter smile appeared on their faces as they said, "Do you think that kid Zhuowen will die so easily with his character? You can rest assured that Zhuowen is alive and well. However, that kid has gotten into big trouble." Hearing Gu Yu Tian's meaning, Zhuowen was fine. Only then did Zhuo Xiangding relax. However, Gu Yu Tian's following words caused Zhuo Xiangding's heart to fiercely clench. Zhuowen has gotten into trouble. Just what did he do? According to the information that my spies have gathered, Zhuowen should have obtained the most precious treasure in the ancient cave dwelling, an earthly soul treasure. His earthly soul treasure? When Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Baitian heard this, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. It should be known that the entire Zhuo family, and even Tingjia City, did not possess a single high-rank soul treasure. Earthly soul treasures that were above high-rank soul treasures were basically things of legend in their eyes. How is that possible? I heard that many forces in the prefecture capital have sent experts to the ancient cave dwelling. Even the prefecture capital's 3 marquises, Jade Lady Star Court, and the Imperial Sword School have sent experts. Among so many experts, how could Zhuowen have the chance to obtain the earthly soul treasure in the ancient cave dwelling? After the shock, Zhuo Xiangding's face suddenly revealed a look of disbelief. He was very clear that the experts sent by the forces in the prefecture capital were all in the human king realm. There were even many in the Earth King realm. Each of them could completely crush the Zhuo family. Actually, I also find it somewhat unbelievable. It is said that Zhuowen even viciously beat up Lu Yuanhua of the house of Marquis Qin in front of everyone. Now, I'm afraid that Zhuowen's strength has reached an unfathomable level, Gu Yu Tian said bitterly. Boom! Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Beitian's minds suddenly exploded. Their eyes bulged and their eyes were filled with disbelief. Zhuo Xiangding's lips trembled as he said, "The Lu Yuanhua you are talking about is the third prince of the house of Marquis Qin, the Lu Yuanhua whose strength has reached the complete Earth King realm?" Yes, it is that Lu Yuanhua. This matter is definitely not a rumor. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. The bitterness on Gu Yuetian's face grew increasingly intense. Zhuo Wen's battle results were simply too dazzling, so dazzling that Gu Yuetian wished that Zhuo Wen was his own son. He even defeated Lu Yuanhua, who is at the complete Earth King realm. How did Zhuo Wen's progress become so fast? Zhuo Xiangding's eyes were lifeless as he muttered in a low voice. This is just the beginning. It is said that when Zhuowen walked out of the ancient cave mansion, he was surrounded by thousands of experts. These experts were sent by the forces of the province. The weakest of them was at the human king realm, and the strongest was at the complete Earth King realm. Before Gu Yu Tian could finish his words, he was involuntarily interrupted by Zhuo Xiangding. Zhuo Xiangding's eyes were red as he angrily said, "Thousands of experts surrounded a young man. These experts of the province's forces are really good. Lord Gu, what is the final result? Did Zhuowen escape from the encirclement of thousands of people?" "Father, Lord Gu has just said that Zhuowen is not dead. Obviously, this kid has definitely escaped from the encirclement of thousands of experts. It seems that this kid has gained a lot in the ancient cave mansion. He was actually able to escape from the encirclement of thousands of human king realm experts." "That's right. It seems that the disaster that Lord Gu is talking about should be the threat of thousands of experts. After all, if those experts can't find Zhuowen, it is very likely that they will use our Zhuo family to threaten Zhuowen." Zhuo Xiangding also recovered from his bottleneck, and said in a deep voice. Gu Yu Tian and the other two looked at the father and son in front of them with strange expressions on their faces. Zhuo Xiangding also noticed the strange expressions on the faces of Gu Yu Tian and the other two. He frowned slightly and asked, "Lord Gu, is the result not like this?" Gu Yu Tian laughed dryly and said, "Zhuowen did not escape. In the end, he annihilated thousands of experts at the entrance of the cave mansion." Chapter 243. Arcane Ceremony Deng. Zhuo Xiangding suddenly stood up, knocking over the stone stool beside his feet. He stared straight at Gu Yu Tian, his lips trembling as he asked, "You're saying that those thousands of cultivators who were all at the human king realm and above were all annihilated by Zhuo Wen alone?" Gu Yu Tian's elbows were also trembling at this moment. Clearly, Gu Yu Tian's words were too impactful. Those were thousands of human king realm cultivators, and there were even quite a number of Earth King realm cultivators among them. How could such a force be annihilated by Zhuo Wen alone? It's absolutely true. Zhuo Wen relied on the Earth rank soul treasure he obtained from the ancient cave mansion to annihilate those thousands of human king realm cultivators in one fell swoop. At this moment, Gu Yu Tian's eyes shone with a blazing light. When he spoke of Zhuo Wen's battle achievements, even he couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion. Annihilating an army of thousands of people with the strength of a single person, such a battle achievement would make one's blood boil just thinking about it. On the other hand, Gu Lai's expression was complicated and fearful. When he heard of Zhuo Wen's battle achievements, he also thought that there was something wrong with his ears. Now Gu Lai couldn't help but think of the stubborn young man who dared to raise his head and hold his chest high during the battle of the city square. The stubborn young man in his mind overlapped with the young man who annihilated thousands of cultivators with the strength of a single person. Gu Lai suddenly let out an involuntary sigh. He began to regret his actions of offending the young man back then. As for the disaster that I mentioned, it is because of this. Those thousands of practitioners were basically experts sent out by the various factions in the province. Now that Zhuo has annihilated all of them, he has offended the majority of the factions in the province. I'm afraid that those factions in the province will not let this matter rest and will do harm to your Zhuo family. I think that your Zhuo family had better make plans as soon as possible. Gu Tian sighed softly as he spoke, somewhat helplessly. After a long time, Zhuo Xiangding recovered from his shock and suddenly said heroically, "It seems that this is indeed troublesome. However, our Zhuo family isn't afraid. At worst, we'll fight against those forces. As long as Zhuo is fine, our Zhuo family will definitely rise. What's wrong with sacrificing the current Zhuo family?" That's right. The reason our Zhuo family has become so prosperous is all thanks to Zhuo. As long as he's fine, the rise of our Zhuo family is only a matter of time. Zhuo Baitian also stood up and said with a stern expression. Looking at the resolute expressions of the two people in front of him, Gu Tian and the other two sighed. They finally understood just how extraordinary Zhuo Wen's position in the Zhuo family was. Just as Gu Tian was about to say something, he suddenly tilted his head and looked at the horizon with a grave expression. He frowned and said, "There's a very powerful aura rushing over here. This aura is at least at the Earth King stage." As soon as Gu Tian said this, the few people present couldn't help but stand up and look at the horizon. They saw that in the distance, a black dot was constantly rushing towards them. Its speed was as fast as lightning. When the black shadow got closer, the few people finally saw the true face of the black shadow. It was actually Zhuo, who had rushed back to the Zhuo family without stopping. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Zhuo arrived above the Zhuo family. With a leap, he appeared in the courtyard of the Battle Spirit Pavilion. Zhuo could feel the aura of Gu Tian and the others from afar. Therefore, as soon as he returned to the Zhuo family, Zhuo directly went to the Battle Spirit Pavilion. Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Baitian took a step forward and arrived in front of him. They carefully sized up the youth who had created a glorious battle record in front of them. "You've actually reached the Earth King stage? And you really obtained the Earth-rank soul treasure of the ancient cave dwelling? You even annihilated several thousand warriors at the Human King stage and above?" Zhuo Xiangding's hands trembled as he placed them on Zhuo Wen's shoulders. Zhuo was slightly startled. He didn't expect that Zhuo Xiangding would receive the news so quickly. However, after seeing Gu Tian, Gu Lai and Grandmaster Kuraki behind him, he knew that the three of them must have told Zhuo Xiangding the news. After all, with the City Lord's mansion's ability to gather information, they would naturally be able to gather information outside the cave dwelling without leaking a single drop of information. Yes. Hearing this, Zhuo naturally nodded his head subconsciously. Although the few of them were mentally prepared, when they saw Zhuo personally nod his head at this moment, they couldn't help but feel their hearts tug violently. "Zhuo, then what do you plan to do next? You've killed those experts. I'm afraid that the forces in the prefecture capital won't let this matter rest. It's very likely that they will come looking for trouble." Gu Tian's gaze was strange as he spoke with some concern. "You can rest assured. Miss Qing Lian of the Jade Lady Star Court once promised me that her sect is willing to contain the forces of the prefecture capital so that they won't come looking for trouble with our Zhuo family. However, what I'm worried about is the battle for the Vitality Tower in 2 years. At that time, I'll have to go to the prefecture capital. At that time, I'm afraid that I'll become a target for everyone." Zhuo frowned as he spoke until here. Kid, you've forgotten your identity as an arcanist. With your talent, you should be able to become a third-rank arcanist within 2 years. At that time, you only need to go to the Arcanist Guild to take the test and obtain the badge of a third-rank arcanist. With this identity, even the House of Marquis Qin won't dare to touch you at will when you arrive at the prefecture capital. Master Kuraki, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke with a face full of pride. After all, in the Qing Xian Empire, a fourth-rank arcanist's status was comparable to that of an ordinary noble. A third-rank arcanist who was slightly weaker would naturally have a high status. Even a noble might not have the right to casually kill a third-rank arcanist. Hearing this, Zhuo Wen's heart suddenly became clear. Master Kuraki was right. As long as he obtained the badge of a third-rank arcanist in the Arcanist Guild, his status would definitely be elevated by a lot. Even the house of Marquis Qin wouldn't dare to touch him at will. I actually forgot about this. Master Kuraki, let's go to the Arcanist Guild to take the test in a few days. This time, I should be able to obtain the badge of a third-rank arcanist. Zhuo Wen looked at Master Kuraki in front of him and said with a smile, "Kid, there's no need to be in such a hurry. Your mental strength has already reached the peak of the second rank. 2 years is enough for you to break through the shackles and reach the third rank. At that time, you can take the test and obtain the badge of a third-rank arcanist." "Wait, kid, what did you say just now?" Master Kuraki patted Zhuo Wen's shoulder and said in a somewhat earnest manner. However, halfway through his words, the hand on Zhuo Wen's shoulder suddenly stiffened. His eyes suddenly widened as he stared straight at the young man in front of him. Zhuo Wen shrugged and said, "During the battle for the ancient cavern, I was lucky enough to break through to the third-rank Arcanist Guild. Therefore, I should be able to take the test of a third-rank Arcanist now." Hiss. At this moment, the sound of people inhaling cold air suddenly rose and fell. Not only Master Kuraki, but also Gu Yutian and Gu Lai beside him. Zhuo Xiangding and the other 3 also stiffened at this moment. Their pupils shrank slightly as they stared at the young man in front of them. The atmosphere instantly became somewhat strange and quiet. "You said that your mental strength has already broken through to the third rank? Is this true?" Master Kuraki's lips trembled violently as he asked with a sudden burst of light in his eyes. Spreading out his hands, Zhuo Wen's mind moved. Mental strength as vast as the starry sky in his Naiwen palace suddenly poured out and filled the entire courtyard. Suddenly, an invisible pressure was produced. Under this pressure, the few people could not help but bend their knees slightly, and their faces were filled with horror. It really is a third-rank mental strength. Zhuo Wen, I really don't know what words to use to express my current feelings. I only want to say that you are too monstrous. The corner of Master Kuraki's mouth twitched, and he could not help but burst out laughing as he cursed. However, looking at the hearty smile on his face, it also showed the joy in Master Kuraki's heart. After all, Zhuo Wen was his disciple. The more outstanding his disciple was, the happier he would be as his master, and the more face he would have. Good. This is also good. Since your mental strength has already reached the third rank, then we will depart for Broken Rock City in a month's time. There is an Arcanist Association branch in that city, and the chairman of the Arcanist Association branch is an old acquaintance of yours." Stroking his long white beard, Master Kuraki said with a hearty smile. Zhuo Wen nodded and then asked with some doubt, "Why do we have to depart in a month's time?" "Haha. In a month's time, Broken Rock City will hold the Arcanist ceremony for the younger generation. I want you to participate in that Arcanist ceremony. You should know that if you are able to obtain victory in the ceremony, the reward is a 4th-rank yuan array." Master Kuraki stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Arcanist ceremony? The reward is actually a 4th-rank yuan array?" When Zhuo Wen heard this, a glint immediately flashed across his eyes. In the ancient cave dwelling, Zhuo Wen had once witnessed the might of the 4th-rank yuan array, golden armored general array. Under the effects of this array, Lu Yuanhua, whose strength was merely at the earthly king stage, was actually able to explosively increase his strength to the ultimate emperor stage. This kind of heaven-defying effect really shocked Zhuo Wen. Therefore, when he heard about the 4th-rank yuan array, Zhuo Wen naturally coveted it in his heart. He fiercely nodded and said, "Then we will depart in a month's time." In any case, Zhuowen was not in a hurry. After all, he still needed to hand over some of the resources he obtained from the ancient cave dwelling to Zhuo Xiangding before he left. He wanted to ensure that after he left, the Zhuo family had a certain amount of strength that could withstand the attacks of some factions with ill intentions in the outside world. Only then could he leave with a peace of mind. Late at night, the sky was filled with stars. In a secluded loft, Zhuowen sat quietly with his legs crossed. At this moment, his hands were holding a dim yellow map. Xiao He, the Wind Thunder Emperor, left a message in his stone coffin. The secret of the Wind Thunder sacred symbol is hidden in the map of the cave dwelling. Why can't I see anything special about this map no matter how I look at it? Do you think that the Wind Thunder Emperor has nothing better to do and is trying to trick us? Gently putting down the map, Zhuowen softly sighed as he looked at Xiao He, who was floating in midair, and said, "Trick your head. The Wind Thunder Emperor has been dead for tens of thousands of years. Do you think he has the time to trick a junior like you? In his eyes, you are just an ant-like existence." Xiao He's little paw knocked on Zhuowen's head and shouted loudly. Chapter 244. 6 Wings of Wind and Thunder. You're right. Perhaps the power of lightning can change this map. Furthermore, this Dragon Lord has probed it. The material of this map is extremely special. I'm afraid that even a Heavenly King stage practitioner would not be able to tear this map apart. Xiao He's black eyes shone with a dazzling light. Let's test it out with the 9 Heavens Thunder Inferno. I hope it's as you say. This map is indeed tough. After pondering for a moment, Zhuowen's mind moved. The 9 Heavens Thunder Inferno in his body immediately surged and boiled. Soon after, Zhuowen's palm was wrapped in a ball of blue lightning. With the help of the Ice-Fire sacred symbol, Zhuowen could control the 9 Heavens Thunder Inferno very easily. It was as if he was commanding it with his own arm. Chi-chi, chi-chi. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. Finally, his right hand, which was wrapped in lightning, slowly approached the edge of the map. With a strange crackling sound, the dim yellow surface of the map was completely wrapped in lightning. Traces of numbing explosions suddenly rang out. What's going on? The map couldn't have been destroyed by the lightning, right? Looking at the map that was instantly wrapped in lightning, a look of panic immediately appeared on Zhuowen's face. This map contained the secrets and clues of the Wind-Lightning sacred symbol. If it was destroyed just like that, who would Zhuowen cry to? Bang! An ear-piercing explosion suddenly rang out. The map that was wrapped in lightning actually exploded at this moment. Traces of black dust scattered. Amidst the countless black dust, a dark blue metal piece suddenly appeared. The metal piece was about the size of a palm. Its surface was engraved with strange runes. Traces of electricity were like small snakes that constantly swam on the surface of the metal piece. It seems that this cave-dwelling map does indeed contain something. But what is this thing? Looking at the floating blue metal piece that was constantly emitting traces of electricity, Zhuowen's eyes suddenly lit up. A trace of joy immediately appeared on his face. I can sense that this metal piece has a trace of the Wind-Lightning sacred symbol's aura. However, this aura is extremely weak. Xiao He rubbed his chin as he spoke with uncertainty. Kid, you can use your mental power to investigate. Perhaps you'll be able to discover something useful. Rolling his eyes, Zhuowen did not waste any more time. With a thought, the mental energy in his Naiwen palace poured out and shot into the metal plate. Buzz. As soon as his mental power came into contact with the metal piece immediately trembled and emitted a loud buzzing sound. Then, the electric threads on its surface suddenly appeared crazily and countless electric threads spread out in a dense manner. Zhuowen was startled. He hurriedly waved his hand and flung the piece of metal away. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at the piece of metal floating in the air. He hadn't expected the metal piece's reaction to be so great. What's going on? Zhuowen muttered with his brows tightly knitted. However, just as he finished speaking, the electric threads on the surface of the metal piece became even more violent. The densely packed electric threads actually formed densely packed words in the air. The words were only the size of a thumb, and at a glance, there were at least a few hundred of them. I have split the wind-lightning sacred symbol into 6 parts. With my tens of thousands of years of comprehension and experience, I have finally successfully integrated the 6 great origins of the wind-lightning sacred symbol into my self-created cultivation method. I have named this cultivation method 6 Wings of Wind and Lightning. If you have successfully studied the 6 wings of wind and lightning, then you will be able to obtain the complete wind-lightning sacred symbol. The 6 wings of wind and lightning is divided into 2 major categories, namely thunder wings and wind wings. Thunder wings are composed of thunder snake wings, thunder dragon wings, and thunder dragon wings. If you have cultivated thunder wings, then you will have the speed of thunder and can travel thousands of miles in an instant. Wind wings are composed of wind bird wings, wind eagle wings, and phoenix wings. If you have cultivated wind wings, then you will be able to roam freely in the world. After carefully reading the words formed by the lightning in the air, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed slightly. He muttered to himself in astonishment, "The wind-lightning sacred symbol is really bold. He can actually integrate such a supreme treasure of heaven and earth like the wind-lightning sacred symbol into his cultivation method. He is indeed very powerful. It seems that I have underestimated the wind-lightning sacred symbol. The wind-lightning sacred symbol can be modified by himself. The wind-lightning sacred symbol is the first person in history. He has an extremely profound understanding of the law of heaven and earth. If he is still alive, it is very likely that he will become a warrior who can comprehend the law of heaven and earth, and become a god," Xiao He suddenly said with a solemn expression. Zhuowen nodded. Although he didn't know much about Emperor Wind Thunder, he could tell from the handwriting that Emperor Wind Thunder was a carefree person who didn't stick to one pattern. Even though the Saint Talisman was regarded as a treasure by others, he didn't care about the consequences of breaking it. According to the wind-lightning sacred symbol, has been integrated into the 6 wings of wind and lightning cultivation method. Therefore, if I want to obtain the wind-lightning sacred symbol, I have to cultivate and comprehend the 6 wings of wind and lightning cultivation method. Zhuowen pondered for a while and said with a slight frown, "I'm afraid so. However, the metal piece in your hand is obviously incomplete. In other words, you have only obtained a part of the 6 wings of wind and lightning." This dragon lord knew that it wouldn't be that easy to obtain the sacred talisman. It is the same for the ice-fire sacred symbol and the wind-lightning sacred symbol. Looking at the broken metal piece in Zhuowen's hand, Xiao He said with a sigh. Zhuowen also smiled bitterly. It was just as Xiao He had said. What was recorded on the blue metal plate was merely one of the chapters of the 6 wings of wind and lightning. It was called Lightning Snake Wings. It was said that if one cultivated the lightning snake wings to a high level, enormous lightning wings that were formed from countless lightning snakes would condense on one's back. Although its speed was not as fast as lightning, it was not to be outdone either. Zhuowen knew that if he were to complete it, even a heavenly king stage cultivator would be left far behind by him. Furthermore, the countless lightning snakes had the effect of attacking and slowing down the enemy, which could be said to be a good thing for escaping. Among the 9 great sacred symbols, the ice-fire sacred symbol was a type of sacred symbol that was extremely destructive. However, the wind-lightning sacred symbol was different. Wind and lightning were 2 types of energy that were extremely fast in the world. This also resulted in the wind-lightning sacred symbol's owner's speed. The person who possessed the wind-lightning sacred symbol had unparalleled speed in the world. If it was fully displayed, it could even shatter the void and travel through space. On the other hand, the wind-lightning sacred symbol had been integrated into the 6 wings of wind and lightning. Relatively speaking, it was more suitable for warriors to cultivate. After all, refining the sacred symbol had a certain degree of danger. In this regard, The wind-lightning sacred symbol could be said to be the pioneer of the sacred symbol. The 6 wings of wind and lightning is, after all, a fusion of the origin of the wind and lightning sacred symbol. If you cultivate it completely, it is said that you can have 6 wings on your back. They are the lightning snake wings, lightning flood dragon wings, lightning dragon wings, wind bird wings, wind eagle wings, and phoenix wings. Once the 6 wings are assembled, you will have the full power of the wind and lightning sacred symbol. Shattering the void would shatter the void, Xiao He said with a hint of admiration in her eyes. Even so, I only have the lightning snake wings technique in my hand. The 6 wings of wind and lightning is incomplete. At this point, Zhuowen could not help but reveal a trace of bitterness at the corner of his mouth. Kid, are you stupid? The 6 chapters of the 6 wings of wind and lightning are made from the origin of the wind and lightning sacred symbol. There must be a trace of connection between them. Now that you have the lightning snake wings, it will naturally be easy to find the remaining 5 chapters. Once you've completely mastered the lightning snake wings, you'll naturally be able to sense the other 5 great chapters. Xiao He gave Zhuowen a big roll of her eyes and said with some disappointment. That's true. Looks like I need to cultivate the lightning snake wings first. Ignoring Xiao He's ridicule, Zhuowen nodded indifferently. Time flew by and a month passed in the blink of an eye. During this 1 month, the entire Tingjia city and even the surrounding factions were in an uproar. The reason was because of the fight for the ancient cave mansion. Zhuowen's various feats had spread throughout the area within a 10,000-mile radius of Tingjia city. Even some of the neighboring low-rank cities were abuzz with the news. He had barged into the cave dwelling alone and obtained the earthly soul treasure from the various forces in the province capital. He had even violently beaten up the 3rd prince of the house of Marquis Qin, Lu Yuanhua. The most shocking thing was that Zhuowen had single-handedly annihilated thousands of human King Realm warriors, including some Earth King Realm warriors. Such a glorious battle record had practically spread throughout Rattan Armor City and the surrounding areas. Zhuowen's reputation had also risen because of this. Everyone knew that the Zhuo family of Rattan Armor City had a peerless, ruthless person named Zhuowen. In addition, the province capital was also in an uproar. When a few warriors returned to the province capital in a daze, all the forces in the province capital were shocked. Thousands of human King Realm warriors had been annihilated in just one move. Even a large force like the House of Marquis Qin would feel heartache, not to mention the forces under the House of Marquis Qin. Zhuowen's reputation had also spread throughout the province capital because of this. Just as some forces were about to seek revenge on Zhuowen, the Jade Lady Astral Court stepped in to stop them. With the influence of the Jade Lady Astral Court in the province capital, these forces who wanted to stir up trouble immediately ceased their activities. After all, the overall strength of the Jade Lady Astral Court was not weaker than the super forces of the 3 marquises of the province capital. It was the appearance of the Jade Lady Astral Court that caused many forces in the province capital to speculate about the identity of Zhuowen, who they had never met before. Naturally, the identity of Zhuowen had become very mysterious in the eyes of many forces in the province capital. In the province capital, the Jade Lady Astral Court was located on a star peak that was tens of thousands of feet high. Countless pavilions and towers loomed on the star peak, appearing illusory and ethereal. At the top of the star peak, in a huge palace surrounded by starlight, a graceful beauty with snow-white skin was standing quietly in the palace. She was looking at the endless sea of fog outside with her hands behind her back. This woman was called Luo Xing. She was the strongest among the younger generation of the Jade Lady Astral Court. Her cultivation had reached the unfathomable ultimate Emperor realm. At the same time, she was ranked 30th on the Green Emperor list. It could be said that she was a seated contestant in the battle for the Vitality Tower. Luo Xing's jade-like hand gently stroked her hair. She opened her cherry lips and said indifferently, "Qinglian, this time you rashly intervened in so many forces just for Zhuowen from a low-level city? Do you really think this kid is worth our Jade Lady Star Court paying such a high price? Chapter 245. Chapter 245. Heavenly Spirits and Earthly Fiends. Qing Lian bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth and said firmly, Senior Sister Luo Xing, even though Zhuowen is only from a low-grade city, the natural talent and strength he displayed is already comparable to most of the geniuses in our county. Furthermore, Zhuowen is only 16 years old. To be able to defeat Lu Yuanhua at such a young age is already enough to show his great potential. Only 16 years old? He can actually defeat Lu Yuanhua? Luo Xing's star-like eyes flashed as he muttered to himself in surprise. Moreover, Zhuowen has a lot of trump cards on him. I can feel that in 2 years, this kid will definitely shine in the Essence Tower battle. Entering the top 100 will definitely not be a problem. He might even be able to enter the top 50. Qing Lian's beautiful eyes flickered. She could not help but recall the ruthless scene of Zhuowen annihilating thousands of martial artists that day. I didn't expect you to have such a high opinion of him. Muqin County is vast, and there are tens of thousands of cities within it. Even the super cities have hundreds of cities, and the number of geniuses is in the hundreds of thousands. Amongst so many geniuses, being able to enter the top 100 is already considered an outstanding talent, and being able to enter the top 50 is already considered a monstrous genius. There are only 5 or 6 people in our Jade Lady Star Court who can enter the top 50. Are you sure this kid has the strength to enter the top 50? So, Luo Xing suddenly turned around. Her beautiful eyes contained an evil aura as she stared at the somewhat stubborn young lady in front of her. Her tone was somewhat heavy. At the same time, a faintly discernible powerful pressure suddenly burst out from her body, causing the entire palace to show signs of shaking. Senior Sister Luo Xing, I believe that Zhuowen has such potential. If he is unable to get into the top 50, Qing Lian is willing to accept the punishment of the sect. A pressure that was like a mountain suddenly poured down. Qing Lian let out a muffled groan as her knees bent slightly. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth, but she did not care. She only stubbornly stared at the falling star in front of her without saying a word. Sigh. I will believe you this time. I hope that this Zhuowen you speak of can really help our Jade Lady Star Court in 2 years. Otherwise, I will personally kill him. Luo Xing sighed softly. The mountain-like pressure on his body immediately receded like the tide. Feeling the pressure on her body recede, Qing Lian's expression relaxed. Then, she cupped her hands and said respectfully, Thank you for your understanding, Senior Sister Luo Xing. Enough. You should also work hard. There are only 2 years until the Essence Energy Tower battle. If you can break through to the half-step Ultimate Emperor realm in these 2 years, entering the top 100 of the Essence Energy Tower battle won't be a problem. Luo Xing's face regained its indifference as he waved his hand. Thank you, Senior Sister, for your advice. Qing Lian will work hard. Since this matter is over, Qing Lian will withdraw first. Qing Lian bowed slightly and once again spoke respectfully. Go. You can be considered a talented genius of our Jade Lady Star Court. Don't slack off. Luo Xing didn't urge her to stay. Instead, she waved her hand and turned away, no longer looking at Qing Lian. After Qing Lian left the room, Luo Xing's beautiful eyes narrowed. There was a deep chill in the depths of her eyes. She muttered to herself, Zhuowen? I hope you can really satisfy me like Qing Lian said. Otherwise, I don't mind getting rid of you first. 10,000 feet to the east of the Jade Lady Star Court, a huge castle like a black dragon suddenly stood between the heavens and the earth. It was as if a coiled dragon could soar into the sky at any time. In front of the bluestone city gate, the words, House of Marquis Qin, were engraved on the top of the gate. A magnificent aura suddenly emanated from it. This castle like a dormant dragon was the House of Marquis Qin. Inside the Marquis mansion there were many pavilions, terraces, and pavilions. Countless palaces protruded like mountains. It occupied a large area, almost hundreds of times the size of Rattan Armor City. It was just like a small city. Inside the house of Marquis Qin, in a rather luxurious pavilion, Lu Yuanhua sat beside a tea table. His face was smeared with dog skin plaster, looking very funny. Lu Yuanhua slammed the tea table and said to a young man opposite him with an angry face, "Second brother, that Zhuowen is too arrogant. He dares to despise the authority of our house of Marquis Qin. He dares to beat me like this in front of so many people. If I don't catch him and cut him into pieces, it will be impossible to relieve the hatred in my heart." The young man wore a long green silk robe. His long hair casually draped over his shoulders. A faint smile appeared on his handsome white face like a cool breeze. This young man was Lu Yuanhua's second brother, the second prince of the house of Marquis Qin, Lu Yongxing. He was also a powerhouse on the Qin Huang rankings. His strength was around the peak of the ultimate emperor realm. Don't think that LV Yongxing is a good person just because he looks amiable on the surface. Actually, he is a guy who hides a knife in his smile. Perhaps when he stabs you in the back, he is also smiling. Lu Yongxing's face was full of indifference as he said indifferently, "He's just a nobody from a low-level city. Dealing with a nobody like him is as easy as moving a finger. Third brother, do you think I would chase after that Zhuowen for a nobody?" Lu Yuanhua's expression changed. He said with some unwillingness, "Second brother, I just can't accept it. That bastard Zhuowen dares to beat me in front of so many people. He's really too audacious. Are we just going to let him live freely like this? Didn't you say that Zhuowen will also participate in the Origin Qi Tower battle in 2 years? 2 years later, as long as we enter the Origin Qi Tower, we will have plenty of opportunities to kill that brat. Why are we in such a hurry? After all, these 2 years are very precious. If I can successfully break through to the ultimate Emperor realm, a spot in the top 10 of the Origin Qi Tower battle won't be a problem." When LV Yongxing said this, his eyes burst out with a trace of light, and the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of a faint smile. "Second brother, you're also going to break through? If you are able to break through, you will definitely be able to enter the top 10. In that case, our Mu Qin Marquis Mansion will occupy 2 of the top 10 spots this time around. It will definitely cause our Mu Qin Marquis Mansion's reputation to soar." LV Yuanhua was pleasantly surprised when he heard these words. Unexpectedly, Lu Yongxing shook his head and said indifferently, "It's not that easy to obtain a spot in the top 10. After all, Jade Maiden Star Court's Luo Xing, Imperial Sword Sex Zhu Qi, Marquis Baichuan's Su Tianliang, and Marquis Yongxing's Qin Batian are all on the Azure Emperor leaderboard. In addition, there are also some experts on the Azure Emperor leaderboard in the top-ranked cities. I'm afraid that this year's Origin Qi Tower battle will be particularly fierce." Lu Yongxing looked at Lu Yuanhua and said, "Even Big Brother has started his closed-door training, so I can't slack off. Third brother, let's put aside the matter of revenge for now. With your talent, you should be able to reach the half-step Ultimate Emperor realm in 2 years. At that time, entering the top 100 won't be a problem. So, let's first prepare for the Origin Qi Tower battle, then talk about revenge." After Lu Yongxing finished speaking, he took a step and disappeared from the loft. Lu Yuanhua fell into deep thought. After a while, he coldly snorted and muttered to himself, "Second brother is right. The Origin Qi Tower battle is the most important thing. Humph, then I'll let that bastard Zhuowen jump around for 2 more years. After 2 years, I'll let that bastard know what it's like to live a life worse than death." Early morning sprinkled a soft light. Rattan Armor City was empty and quiet as usual. At this moment, in the courtyard of the Zhuo family, the figure of a young man was quietly sitting cross-legged. Whoosh! The young man suddenly opened his eyes. His clear eyes were devoid of joy or sorrow. Then, with a twist of his waist, he lightly stepped on the ground and leaped into the air. He was 10 feet above the ground. In the air, the young man's hands instantly formed a few seals. A bolt of lightning flashed in his ethereal eyes. Lightning snake wings of the 6 wings of tempest. A low roar came from the young man's throat. Then, countless bolts of lightning suddenly burst out from his body. The densely packed bolts of lightning transformed into countless huge lightning snakes. As the lightning snakes coiled around the young man's back, they condensed. In the end, a huge pair of lightning wings that extended for 10 feet appeared on the young man's back. Rumble! A thunderous roar exploded in the courtyard. The young man floated in the air. Countless lightning snakes could be faintly seen entwined on his 10-meter-long wings. An extremely powerful pressure poured out from him. With a light flap of the lightning wings, the young man's body suddenly left behind afterimages. Countless afterimages overlapped, as if there were countless clones. These afterimages were produced when one's speed reached its peak. At the same time, endless lightning shot out from the afterimages. In the blink of an eye, the young man's figure appeared on the other side of the courtyard. At this moment, when the young man turned his head, he could even see the afterimages left behind. The young man was Zhuowen. At this moment, a look of ecstasy appeared on Zhuowen's face. He laughed excitedly. The lightning snake wings have finally been refined. Now, my speed can be considered as fast as lightning. I'm afraid that even a Heavenly King stage cultivator won't be able to catch my figure. I'm even confident that with this speed, I can escape from an ultimate Emperor stage expert. During this month, Zhuowen's life was quite fulfilling. In the morning, he cultivated the lightning snake wings. In the afternoon, he went to Grandmaster Tsangmu's place to refine crystals. At night, he used the materials in his Qiankuan bag to refine puppet. In a month's time, not only was Zhuowen able to skillfully refine a 3rd-grade origin crystal, he had even reached the initial level of mastery in the lightning snake wings, which was rather difficult to cultivate. What surprised Zhuowen the most was the aspect of puppet. With the guidance of the myriad evolution scripture, Zhuowen refined 108 puppets. They were a type of joint puppet formation called the Heavenly Spirits and Earthly Fiend. Among them, there were 36 Heavenly Spirits puppets, all at the Earth King stage. 72 Earthly Fiends puppets, all at the Human King stage. The 108 puppets had a unique joint attack technique. The strength they could unleash was comparable to a half-step Ultimate Emperor stage expert. Chapter 246. Aunt Zhuo Meijin. The Zhuo family courtyard was filled with people, most of whom were members of the Zhuo family. At the front of the crowd were the core members of the Zhuo family, such as Zhuo Xiangding and Zhuo Baitian. Behind Zhuo Xiangding and the others, there were many juniors with fanatical and excited expressions. These juniors' eyes contained deep admiration as they looked at the figure at the entrance of the courtyard. This figure was not very old, only about 16 or 17 years old. His figure was tall and straight, and there was a faint smile on his handsome face. This person was Zhuowen. A month had already passed. Today, Zhuowen planned to follow Grandmaster Kuraki to Broken Rock City to take the Arcana test and obtain the badge of a 3rd-rank Arcanist. The badge was the status symbol of an Arcanist. With the badge, Zhuowen would have certain privileges and status no matter where he went in the Qingxian Empire. As a result, obtaining the badge would be very convenient for Zhuowen when he went to the provincial capital 2 years later. After all, after the battle for the ancient cavern mansion, Zhuowen had offended most of the forces in the prefecture. Although these forces did not dare to cause trouble for Zhuowen because of the Jade Lady Star Court, if Zhuowen entered the prefecture, it would be like a lamb entering a tiger's den. Therefore, only by obtaining the badge of a level 3 Arcanist could Zhuowen ensure that he would not become a target of public criticism when he entered the prefecture in 2 years. At this moment, there were already 2 people standing beside Zhuowen. One of them was Master Kuraki, and the other was the city lord of Rattan Armor City, Guyu Tian. When he heard that Zhuowen was leaving today, Guyu Tian specially came to the Zhuo family to send him off. As the city lord, The fact that he was able to do so showed how much importance Gu Yutian placed on Zhuowen. He had to be extra careful when he went to Broken Rock City. Even though Broken Rock City couldn't be compared to the provincial capital, it was still one of the top super cities in Muqin County. It was said that the city lord of Broken Rock City was an expert who had stepped into the ultimate emperor realm. Be more cautious. Don't provoke people you shouldn't provoke. Zhuo Xiangding's gaze was somewhat reluctant as he looked at the grandson in front of him, whom he was extremely proud of. However, after he spoke until this point, a trace of hesitation flashed across his face. Soon after, he took out a diamond-shaped jade pendant and handed it to Zhuowen. "Grandpa, this is..." Zhuowen looked at the diamond-shaped jade pendant in his palm. The word Jin was carved in the center of the jade pendant. The word was delicate and elegant, but there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. "This jade pendant is your aunt's personal jade pendant." When Zhuo Xiangding said this, his eyes flashed with a trace of guilt. "My aunt? I actually have an aunt? Why didn't I know about it?" Hearing this, the doubt in Zhuowen's heart grew even stronger. "That's because this old man hid information about your aunt from you. Your father had a younger sister named Zhuo Meijin. Back then, your father Zhuo Xiaotian was extremely talented and was the #1 person in our Zhuo family. Your aunt's talent was equally terrifying. Her cultivation speed was second only to your father's. She was also devastatingly beautiful. At that time, there were many talented young men in Rattan Armor City who pursued her. What a pity! Good times don't last long. Your father went missing 10 years ago, and there has been no news of him ever since." The next year, the eldest son of the Zhao family, one of the 4 great families in Broken Rock City, Zhao Yaoting, came to ask for her hand in marriage. At that time, due to the influence of the Zhao family, Meijin finally agreed. At this point, Zhuo Xiangding suddenly clenched his fists so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. He gritted his teeth and said, "I thought that Meijin would be happy after marrying into the Zhao family. However, who would have thought that half a year later, our Zhuo family would lose contact with Meijin. After that, we went to Broken Rock City many times to inquire about Meijin's situation. However, we were all chased away by the Zhao family. They even said that there was no such person as Zhuo Meijin in the Zhao family." Hearing this, Zhuowen's eyes instantly narrowed. He also did not expect that he actually had an aunt. After searching his mind for a long time, Zhuowen did indeed have a trace of recollection. 10 years ago, when he was still a child, he did indeed have an aunt who was very good to him. However, it was a long time ago and Zhuowen was born in another body. Therefore, he did not pay much attention to that woman who had a faint impression of him. Now that Zhuo Xiangding mentioned it, Zhuowen recalled some things. In other words, ever since aunt was married into the Zhao family, there has been no news of her? His gaze slightly narrowed, but Zhuowen sighed softly in his heart. He knew that it was very likely that his aunt had met with a mishap. Yes, your aunt was originally an exceptionally intelligent woman. If she wanted to leave, she would have definitely informed our Zhuo family. However, 10 years ago, it was as if she had disappeared from the face of the earth. I believe that Meijin's disappearance is related to the Zhao family. Therefore, when you go to Broken Rock City this time, you can investigate your aunt's whereabouts." Zhuo Xiangding's gaze was somewhat dim as he said with a bitter smile, "Grandfather, don't worry. Since this matter concerns my aunt, I, Zhuowen, will naturally investigate." Zhuowen's eyes slightly narrowed as a trace of cold light flashed in them. Although he did not have much of an impression of this aunt of his, from what he remembered, his aunt and his father were very close. Back then, his rise to power was inextricably linked to his father, Zhuowen. Furthermore, Zhuo Meijin was related to him by blood. Therefore, Zhuowen naturally had no choice but to investigate this matter. Seeing Zhuowen readily agree, Zhuo Xiangding's face was filled with joy. He knew that this time, Zhuowen would definitely have a chance to become a third-grade Arcana Master. With the status of a third-grade Arcana Master, it should not be difficult for him to find a woman in Broken Rock City. Grandfather, before I leave, I still have a few things to give you. Zhuowen suddenly patted his Qianquan bag, and a large black shadow immediately scuttled out. Everyone looked over and saw that this black shadow was actually a man with a sluggish expression and listless eyes. This is a puppet? Looking at the sluggish man in front of him, Zhuo Xiangding asked tentatively. In the courtyard, many people's gazes gathered on the puppet, and a trace of curiosity appeared on their faces. After all, this was the first time they had seen the way of puppetry. I didn't expect Zhuo Xiaoyu to also know the way of puppetry. I heard that the art of puppetry was lost in ancient times. It seems that Zhuo Xiaoyu has gained a lot in the ancient cave. I wonder how powerful this puppet is? Guyu Tian, who was standing at the side, suddenly laughed heartily. His eyes contained a trace of shrewdness as he looked at the puppet. Lord Gu, you can test the strength of this puppet. If you are able to defeat this puppet, I can gift it to you. The corner of Zhuo Wen's mouth revealed a faint smile as he spoke in a faint voice. Oh? Are you serious? When Guyu Tian heard this, a trace of emotion appeared on his face. With his sharp intuition, he could feel that the puppet in front of him was extraordinary. Its power should be comparable to an Earth King realm expert. Guyu Tian's strength was already at the advanced Earth King realm, and he was considered above average among Earth King realm experts. He was confident that he could deal with the puppet in front of him. Moreover, the thing that interested him the most was naturally defeating the puppet, and that was why Zhuowen wanted to gift it to him. If he could obtain a puppet whose strength was not inferior to a human king realm expert, the city lord's mansion's strength would naturally increase significantly. After all, the city lord's mansion only had him and Gu Lai who were above the human king realm. Of course. Smiling faintly, Zhuowen replied noncommittally. All right then. I will test the power of this puppet of yours. Guyu Tian was a straightforward person. When Zhuowen agreed, he got into his stance and the aura of an Earth King realm expert burst out from his body. The air in the courtyard suddenly froze. Many members of the Zhuo family retreated continuously under this aura. Even Zhuo Xiangding and a few other members of the Zhuo family's upper echelons bent their knees. Their faces were grave. Obviously, the aura of an Earth King realm expert was too strong. Zhuo Wen and Master Kuraki were probably the only two people who remained calm and collected. Boom! Guyu Tian's legs fiercely bounced off, as his entire body shot out like a spring. In an instant, he arrived above the puppet, as a whip leg flickered with a golden glow as it viciously swept downwards. In an instant, gusts of wind were stirred up, causing the expressions of several people to change. Is this an Earth King realm expert? I did not expect such a simple kick to be so powerful. I'm afraid that Senior Zhuowen's puppet will not be able to withstand such a powerful attack. After seeing the power of Guyu Tian's kick, many of the younger generation in the courtyard revealed looks of awe and yearning. As Guyu Tian's attack neared, the originally motionless puppet abruptly lowered its body, instantly dodging Guyu Tian's whip kick. Subsequently, its steel-like arms suddenly reached out, grabbing onto Guyu Tian's whip kick. With a ferocious twist of its shoulders, it viciously flung Guyu Tian away. Feeling the powerful force under his feet, Guyu Tian's expression changed drastically. He wanted to break free, but he realized that the puppet's arms were as strong as steel. They were indestructible. Boom! Guyu Tian suddenly smashed into the ground. Under the powerful force, a deep pit was formed and dust filled the air. Hiss! The courtyard instantly quieted down. Then, Zhuo Xiangding and the crowd behind him sucked in a breath of cold air. They were somewhat shocked as they looked at Guyu Tian's figure in the deep pit. Guyu Tian, the #1 expert in Vine Armor City and an advanced Earth King realm expert, was actually defeated by an ordinary-looking puppet in one move. His figure was in a sorry state. Cough cough. A complete Earth King realm puppet. I did not expect Zhuo Xiaoyu to have such a powerful puppet. Guyu Tian slowly walked out of the deep pit. His figure was in a sorry state, and there was a trace of bitterness on his face. He looked at Zhuowen with even more fear. He did not expect Zhuowen to have such a powerful puppet. It seemed that he had underestimated the young man in front of him. Even Master Kuraki could not help but take another look at Zhuowen and the puppet behind him. Guyu Tian's strength was on par with his. If even Guyu Tian was defeated, then there was no need to talk about him. It seems that my disciple is quite amazing. Although he looked surprised, Master Kuraki was quite proud of himself as he thought to himself. Lord Gu, I'm sorry for offending you just now, Zhuowen said apologetically as he cupped his hands. Once the puppet attacked, it was very difficult to control. Zhuowen did not expect Guyu Tian to be defeated so easily. It's okay. In fact, I am not seriously injured. However, your Zhuo family is lucky. With this complete Earth King realm puppet, I'm afraid that your Zhuo family's strength will rise to another level. Guyu Tian waved his hand and looked at the puppet with envy. I'm afraid it will not only rise to another level. Chapter 247. Unsheathing the blade. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. One after another, tall and straight puppets suddenly appeared in front of everyone. There were a total of 108 of them, and each of them emitted an extremely powerful aura. These puppets, there are actually so many of them? Zhuo Xiangding felt that his mind could not wrap itself around it. His pupils abruptly contracted as he stared at the numerous puppets in front of him and muttered in a low voice. These puppets are called the Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend. Among them, there are a total of 36 Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend puppets, and all of them are at the perfect Earth King stage. There are a total of 72 Earth Fiend puppets, and all of them are at the perfect Human King stage. The 108 Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend puppets have a combination skill. If they join forces, they will be able to unleash the Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend formation. Even a Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend formation would be killed by a Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend formation. Zhuowen's voice slowly rang out in the courtyard. Guyu Tian's pupils contracted. He could not help but suck in a breath of cold air as he cried out in disbelief. Even a Heavenly Dipper Earth King stage warrior will die if he enters? Grandfather, you will be in charge of the Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend formation. With the Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend formation in the family, I want to see who dares to offend our Zhuo family while I'm away. At this point, Zhuowen's gaze suddenly turned cold. A faintly discernible pressure spread out, causing many people in the courtyard to involuntarily shiver. Zhuowen waved his right hand, and a simple and unadorned wooden tablet shot into Zhuo Xiangding's palm. Trembling as he received the wooden tablet, Zhuo Xiangding suddenly did not know what to say. However, his slightly red eyes already showed that his heart was not calm. His lips trembled violently, and Zhuo Xiangding still said in disbelief, Zhuowen, are you really planning to hand this Heavenly Dipper Earth Fiend formation to me? Looking at the unusually excited old man in front of him, Zhuowen smiled gently and said, The Tiangang Disha was originally refined by me to be used to protect the clan. Now that I hand it over to you, grandfather, as the clan head, it is naturally the most suitable. After getting Zhuowen's affirmation, Zhuo Xiangding looked excited. Under the envious gaze of Guyu Tian and others, he trembled and put the wooden tablet into his arms. This was the central control of the Tiangang and Disha. He could not lose it. Since I've left the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends to you, grandfather, it's time for me to leave. Let us part ways here. With the heavenly spirits and earthly fiends, Zhuowen was completely relieved. He smiled and left the Zhuo family with Master Kuraki. Looking at the two figures gradually leaving, Guyu Tian's expression was rather complicated. He thought that he had already overestimated the young man in front of him. Only now did he realize that not only did he underestimate the latter, more accurately, he could not see through Zhuowen at all. This person is the hidden dragon deep in the sea. Once he goes out to sea, he will be able to soar into the clouds and soar between heaven and earth. He is not someone that Rattan Armor City can restrain. With a bitter laugh, Guyu Tian finally sighed helplessly. The autumn wind was bleak, blowing the fallen leaves on the ground. The rustling sound of the wind constantly reverberated in one's ears, bringing with it a slight chill. A seemingly simple and unadorned carriage was moving quickly on the main road filled with withered leaves. Old man Kuraki, you said that the reward of the Arcana ceremony is a 4th-grade origin formation. May I know the name of the 4th-grade origin formation and what is its function? In the carriage, Zhuowen asked curiously. Ever since he saw the terrifying power of the 4th-grade origin formation golden armored general formation displayed by Lu Yuanhua, Zhuowen had a new understanding of 4th-grade origin formations. Naturally, he had a strong desire for the extremely powerful 4th-grade origin formation. This was also the reason why Zhuowen agreed to participate in the Arcana ceremony without hesitation. Master Kuraki glanced at Zhuowen and shook his head slightly. I only heard about it. After all, the 4th-grade origin formation is the final reward. The Arcana Guild will not reveal it too early. However, I know that the 4th-grade origin formation should be an extremely powerful offensive formation. If you can get it, it will be very helpful for you in the Origin Chi Tower battle in 2 years. Nodding slightly, Zhuowen's eyes were full of anticipation. It had been half a month since they left Rattan Armor City. In this half a month, Zhuowen and Master Kuraki rushed to Broken Rock City almost non-stop. Although Broken Rock City was the nearest super city to Rattan Armor City, it was still hundreds of thousands of miles away. Even if the two hired the most skilled drivers in Rattan Armor City and used the fastest cyan-maned horses, it would still take a month to reach. Using this period of time, Zhuowen also learned a lot about the basic situation of Broken Rock City from Master Kuraki, as well as the distribution of forces. As one of the top-ranked super cities in Muqin County, the distribution of power within Broken Rock City was tangled and complicated. Among them, the one with the greatest power wasn't the City Lord's mansion, but the Arcane Guild branch located in Broken Rock City. The status of an Arcanist was originally much nobler than that of a warrior. In addition, the president of the Arcana Guild in Broken Rock City was a genuine 4th-grade Arcanist. His strength was much stronger than the city governor of Broken Rock City, Ouyang Yuntu. In addition to the status of an Arcanist, the city governor's office in Broken Rock City was almost suppressed by the Arcana Guild. However, Ouyang Yuntu was not the slightest bit dissatisfied with this situation. Instead, he tried his best to favor the Arcana Guild. After all, everyone knew that the Arcana Guild's influence was spread across the entire continent. It was better to provoke the Arcana Guild than to provoke the Arcana Guild. Otherwise, the Arcana Guild could casually create a powerful Yuan formation that could directly wipe out your hometown. Other than the two giants of Broken Rock City, the city governor's office and the Arcana Guild, there were the 4 great clans of Zhao, Huang, Zhou, and Wu. These 4 great clans all had experts of the half-step Ultimate Emperor realm. Therefore, they could firmly become the 4 most powerful forces in Broken Rock City after the city governor's office and the Arcana Guild. Below the 4 great clans, there were many small forces. However, even though these forces were relatively small, their combined strength still surpassed the city governor's office of Rattan Armor City. From this point, one could see the enormous gap between a low-grade city and a super city. Although Broken Rock City cannot be compared to the province capital, the number of experts in it is still quite large. Kid, when you reach there, you should exercise some restraint and not be too careless. Inside the carriage, Grandmaster Tsangmu solemnly warned. Zhuowen's performance in the battle for the ancient cave dwelling was too dazzling. His strength had also increased tremendously in an instant. Grandmaster Tsangmu was afraid that Zhuowen was too young and impetuous, and had become arrogant and complacent. I naturally know that. I also understand the principle that a powerful dragon cannot suppress a snake in its old haunt. Zhuowen gently smiled. He could also feel a trace of concern in Grandmaster Tsangmu's tone, and his heart was slightly warmed. Hualulu. Just as Zhuowen and Grandmaster Tsangmu were happily chatting, the galloping carriage suddenly stopped. The huge inertia did not affect the two in the slightest. Instead, they were still firmly seated in their seat. What's going on? Why did the carriage suddenly stop? Grandmaster Tsangmu frowned slightly and said with some displeasure in his voice. The curtain of the carriage slowly opened, only to see the old coachman trembling all over. He said in a trembling voice, "Sirs, there are dozens of strong men with large swords standing in front of us. We seem to have encountered bandits." Bandits? Frowning slightly, Zhuowen indeed saw dozens of strong men with swords in their hands standing dozens of steps in front of the carriage through the gap of the curtain. However, these dozens of strong men did not look in Zhuowen's direction. Following the line of sight of these strong men, Zhuowen clearly saw that the end of the road was actually a number of carriages. Behind those carriages were piles of goods. Obviously, this was a rather large convoy. At this moment, dozens of strong men with large swords on their backs stared at the people in front of them with ridicule in their eyes. There were more than 50 people in this convoy. The number was slightly more than that of the black-robed man. However, most of them were ordinary people who didn't have any weapons in their hands. There were only a dozen or so warriors who had weapons and were fully clad in armor. Obviously, these warriors should be the convoy's guards. However, what made Zhuowen somewhat surprised was that the leader of these guards was actually a woman in a fiery red dress. The lady was around 20 years old. She had healthy wheat-like skin. Although her appearance could not be considered beautiful, it revealed a trace of heroic spirit, adding a temperament to her. However, this lady's figure was quite hot. She was curvaceous in front and behind. Under the outline of the fiery red clothes, she actually emitted an extremely alluring aura. In addition to this woman, another person in the convoy attracted Zhuowen's attention. That was the girl in a green dress who was protected in the center by many guards. The girl was about 13 years old. Her skin was white with a hint of rosy. Her watery eyes had a trace of mist, which made her look very pitiful. This delicate and pretty girl gave Zhuowen the feeling of a little sister next door. He always wanted to go up and protect her. Boy, there are quite a few young and beautiful women in this convoy. Seeing that you are also a young and vigorous man, do you want to be a hero and save the beauty? Perhaps there is a woman inside who would like to devote herself to him? Black's unique lewd laughter immediately rang out in his mind, causing Zhuowen to involuntarily roll his eyes. Hee. I am too lazy to meddle in other people's business. As for saving the beauty, I think you are thinking too much. The leader of the guards is quite strong. She should be at least a half-step human king. And those strong men in black are not very strong. I am afraid that the woman can deal with them. Zhuowen shrugged and replied secretly in his heart. The arrival of Zhuowen and Master Kuraki attracted the attention of the two teams that were confronting each other. When the people in the convoy saw that someone had come, their faces immediately lit up with joy. However, when they saw that it was only an old man with white hair and beard and a young man who looked weak, the joy on their faces immediately froze. Old man, little brat, you'd better not meddle in other people's business. Otherwise, we will not show mercy to you. The middle-aged man in black, who was the leader of the strong men in black, suddenly raised his big knife and shouted fiercely at Zhuowen and Master Kuraki. The two of them looked at each other. Master Kuraki was expressionless, while Zhuowen shrugged. Then, the two of them actually walked to the side in front of everyone. They really did not intend to meddle in other people's business. Although she knew that the two people in front of her would not be of any help even if they joined, the red-clothed woman was still quite displeased when she saw the two people in front of her withdraw so quickly, as if this matter did not concern them. Her eyes that were filled with a heroic spirit were filled with contempt and disdain. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.